Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is Cee, Certified Brewhead.
And I'm Tiffany, Liquid Enthusiast.
And welcome to episode 160 of Beer Not Just the Podcast Adjunct Series. This is actually this is a first for a few reasons. Yep. First of all, if folks remember the first series of podcasts, we went to 159 of when we used to travel around and do them all in person. So I got to 159 before we decided to start. We did the top 10 countdown and we wanted to do themed seasons. And then our good friend, the pandemic happened and fucked it all up. So we didn't even get the full way through our first themed season. And then we started this adjunct series back from scratch because it was kind of weird to tack onto that other one because it technically was a different series. So now this is 160. This is the first time.
This is like episode 320 or something then.
Correct.
Or something?
So hang on. 159 plus 160. I'm looking at Troy because he's better.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not good at math.
Well, I was like, you did so well last
I'm
time.
good with the calculator.
So it was 318, so this would be 319.
See, close. See, look at
But
that.
then we also did like 35 episodes of the Link Up series.
Oh, yeah, true.
So either way,
we got a lot.
I wish we had to just count it all because then it would be more impressive.
Yeah,
but
so then we could be like episode 500.
Yeah,
we might have to go back and redo all everything. I'm just joking. Your face.
I know.
It's like, nah, man.
This is like 9 years of work.
I know.
We can't start again. So then secondly, for this podcast series, obviously we've had Tiff, we've done some episodes before, but it's otherwise been all via our software here.
Yeah.
So we have a guest in the building, in the crib, the first brewer to ever come to us.
Yeah. That's very cool.
The first in-person guest in this podcast series. So, guys, please welcome Troy Baxter from Badlands in the building. I don't have the clap thing here.
Oh, yeah. I was about to clap.
Real one.
Did our best. Live. Thanks for having me.
Matt, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming through.
Yeah.
In the hammer.
I'm excited to have a conversation in person with no type of delays over spotty internet connections in the country.
In about a month, we're going to do it.
That's it. We're gonna see the difference in the flow.
We're going to do the best we can. So first things first, we are drinking your house roasted coffee, and as I'm saying that, I got like a wave of caffeine.
Excellent.
I was like, oh, there you go. I'm like, a bit of good. Tell us about your the coffee, man. I mean, this is a hobby, just so people know it's not like Badlands.
Yeah, we're not starting a roastery anytime soon.
Yeah,
maybe one day, but we are far too poor at this point to be investing in new businesses such as roasting. So yeah, it is just a hobby I've been doing for years. Been roasting coffee almost as long as I've been brewing beer, and that's just a Brazilian roast.
It's
very
delicious.
simple. Glad to hear.
Yeah.
I don't know. We just roast a lot of random different coffees. We got it from our friends over at Morning Roast, or I guess technically Coffeed. I don't know which one he wants me to use, but he did. Well, yeah. So like Morning Roast, Coffeed's like the
like the wholesale.
Yeah, it's like they're in person by the cup in Oakville.
Oh, okay.
And then Morning Roast is like you see them obviously.
Roaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to them before, and they've sent me little like cool little tasters. Like enough for one pod of everything.
Yep. Yeah. So I got some of the green beans from him, so I could roast a bunch of different stuff.
Nice.
And he was awesome and hooked me up with some really nice green beans. So. Really, we have him to thank as much as me, I guess, for drinking this coffee.
Thank you.
What's his name? I forgot to do his name.
It's embarrassing. I'm going to have to look it up because I can't remember his name right now.
now.
I'm so bad with names. I'm so sorry, man.
We do too. I'm so bad at
There's
it.
two rules. If they're a beer person and you don't know the name, it's almost guaranteed to be Matt.
That sounds about right, yeah.
And if it's a coffee person, it's almost guaranteed to be Chris, because Chris at Duran told me that. I was telling him about the Matt theory, and then he was like, if it's the same thing in coffee, but it's Chris.
Yeah.
His name's Chris. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So shouts to Chris from Morning Roast. And if it's wrong, well...
I don't think it's right, honestly. It's going to come to me maybe later in this podcast, and I'll try and rectify it, and if he hears this, I'm so sorry.
It's completely my fault for putting you on the spot. So this conversation, this was really fun, man, because this came about, you and I were talking, Tiff and I did episode 154.
Is it Joseph?
He's it says owner. Oh, good Googling.
Joseph?
Or Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, yeah.
Joe.
Yeah.
That's a very coffee name.
Yeah.
Cup of Joe.
Italian coffee.
I like that.
Yeah.
No, but just
I
like...
know. Yeah, okay, sweet.
So we did our episode 154. Tiff and I talked about the why craft brewery is closing, and there was some things. So we kind of like researched it a bit and sort of tried to pull some numbers on why we felt that things were not moving in the right direction, why breweries were, essentially closing or merging. And you and I were texting, Troy, and I was asking some questions here, like even things. I was like, I knew that there was a poor hop. What's it called? Harvest. Yeah. In the last couple of years, and I was like, I wonder if there was for grain too. And then you texted me like, hey, answer some of your questions, and you answered some. So then the idea for this podcast came about, where we really just wanted to kind of like take what Tiff and I spoke about and kind of go a little bit deeper and a little bit more into the numbers from some.
With actually an expert.
Yeah. in this is your.
I don't want to be an expert, called an expert here.
You're in the
I
industry.
do read about it regularly, but I'm for sure not an expert. But I'll do my best. I would say, I do live it every day technically.
Technically, an expert
and I do
only
read on it a
someone
lot.
who knows 10% more than everyone else in the room.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So
maybe
you're
in this
probably
room
at
I
a
could be
good-
an expert if you want to call
you're
that.
a good, like 45%.
I would say in other rooms for sure not.
humility.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even to address the hop thing first, actually, rather than going grain first. So the hops industry is in a really funny spot, specifically in the Pacific Northwest. They may have had some like bad harvests, but there's actually a wild oversupply of hops right now.
Really?
Like
even amidst a poor harvest,
like egregiously large. They've been pulling tons of acreage out over the last 2 years. I want to say, I'm going to screw up the numbers, but we're talking like 10,000 acres, like a ton. Right. To put it in perspective, it'd be like pulling out all of the hops grown in all of the Czech Republic, which is, I think, the third or fourth biggest growing region in the world. Okay. That's also how big the Pacific Northwest is for hop growing. But they're pulling out just literally metric shake ton of hops. And even while doing that, so last year they had a relatively good harvest. So 2 years ago was kind of a bad harvest. But they had so many hops planted that they still were producing way more than they needed for the actual brewing market. And a lot of that does obviously go back to, honestly, it's before COVID, but COVID really, really put an exclamation point on the problem because draft beer went away. All these brewers got really, really long on their contracts. And we're talking like not breweries like us that are like 1,100 barrels a year or whatever and have like, a few thousand pounds. We're talking like big dogs that have like hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like half their business gets cut because they don't do draft anymore. And you're like, well, what are you going to do with these hops?
Yeah.
And just in general, a lot of these guys are just still using hops from like 3 years ago to try and get through them. Or they maybe just defaulted on those contracts. But even then...
Were the hop producers lenient about that?
They're getting more lenient.
Okay.
Or like they do obviously... So the hop market's kind of like any other market. It's leveraged up. Welcome to the modern economy.
Yeah.
Basically, these farms they cost a lot of money to operate. Like hop growing is really, really expensive. It's about like $18,000 an acre to put in like a trellis system and plant hops. So you can imagine how much money, for example, if you're pulling out 10,000 acres, that would be a loss.
Yeah.
It's a big deal to pull that out. And typically if you pull out acres, you're probably not going to put them back in. If you take those trellises down, you're going to plant a new crop and that'll just be that. So yeah, I mean, it's expensive to grow hops. You need a lot of infrastructure, and that infrastructure is also used like really, really, really seasonally. Like those hop drying kilns, those processing facilities are only running for like 4 to 8 weeks, maybe, depending on how long the season is. So like you're spending tens of millions of dollars to build these facilities, and they only run for like
8 weeks.
Yeah, like at best case scenario.
Yeah.
Like if you're picking windows tighter, maybe it's only 6 or whatever, right? So obviously these farmers don't have that kind of cash, so they need to take on debt.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the ways that they're able to service that debt is through hop contracts. So they're able to go to like a bank. They're like, hey, look at like we have 3, 5, whatever amount of years of contracts worth X amount of dollars. We also have this land for you to secure against. But like look at our projections basically for the hops. Okay, cool. Here's a new process. Go build your things. So when you start pulling
the contracts off like back,
it can get a little scary for them, understandably. So originally they kind of weren't doing anything about it. They're just like, take your hops. Now they've become a little bit better. They've changed the rules a little bit. If you're selecting, like us, for example, like you need to take them. Otherwise you will no longer have like selection privileges. Right. If you're a little bit more flexible, they might let you roll them into another variety. They might let you roll them into like an older year contract instead. So like, you know, let's say you were 500 pounds heavier or whatever for the year, they might let you roll that into another year, and then they're not going to give you like any interest payments for like storage fees or anything like that. So they have gotten basically just a little bit better, but last I saw, like I want to say this week I saw, it was like they have like a 40 million pound surplus.
Now, is this just PNW or is this like freestyle? Like
just PNW as far as I know.
Wow.
So, yeah, but you got to remember, PNW is this Pacific Northwest. For those who don't know, PNW is by far the biggest hop growing region in the world.
Right.
Can I ask
like Germany's close-ish, but like it's a lot in the Pacific Northwest.
I have just one quick note. You said when you're a selector, you're hop selecting. Does that mean you have like a privilege of like saying I only want certain types, and other places have to take something?
Yeah. So basically, So when we go to do hop selection, we have a contract in place, and then it's a certain amount, and it's for that crop year. So we'll basically we'll rub the flowers, we'll select.
And you're like, we want these. And
we're like, we literally want what we just grabbed off this table in the amounts that we've contracted for. Okay. If you don't care about that privilege, you could still get a contract. Like, let's say you have a core beer, and you're like, it's all Citra. And you're like, well, I know I'm going to need, if I make X amount of beer, you're like, I just need 1,000 pounds this year. I'm going to make this amount. So I'm going to contract 1,000. Yeah. Maybe you contract less because you're more conservative, or maybe you expect growth and you contract for more. Mm-hmm. That's your call to make. But basically, you're like, I just need Citra. I don't care what Citra. Just give me 1,000 pounds of Citra. Yeah. Whatever lot. Don't care. Mm-hmm. Then you can do that, and they're more flexible with that type of contract. Yeah. Basically, they hold like the selection contracts, obviously, like a little higher up. Yeah.
It would be almost bespoke in a way.
It is. It's special, honestly. Yeah. Like, it's a shit ton of work for them to put on, to be blunt. Like, we've been through it a few times now. And like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of staff. Honestly, the work that they put on in the background to even put those like core samples on our table with all of the information from all the different farms as quickly as they do, like, it's a big operation. And I don't think it's honestly unreasonable that they're like, hey, you want to do this? Just take your hops. Like, I think that's a really reasonable thing for them to expect. So I actually find the flexibility they have in other places very reasonable, to be blunt. But in terms of like overall hop market, like if you have a contract right now, let's say for something like Citra, it's like there is so much Citra out there right now. If you're comfortable using like 1, 2, 3-year-old hops potentially in surplus that are just like sitting there ready to be bought at kind of fire sale prices because of the surplus. So even though there was that bad grow year 2 years ago, they still produced like, I don't remember how much, but it was millions of tons or pounds too much. And that's just been growing. It's honestly been growing since about like 2016-ish. Yeah. But the pandemic like just was like steroids for surplus. Yeah. And then this year they had like, compared to 2 years ago, they had like an average year basically, so like a normal yield. So even though they took out all those acres, they harvested the exact same amount of hops almost. So it's like they did not address the surplus whatsoever because like it was just a good grow year. So last I saw, they need to take out like a lot more hops.
Jeez, what a business. Yeah.
So then how does can you just say, hey, I want to do selection, or is that like something that you need to get
you just need volume for it, right? That's why you just need it depends on the company, but like Yakima for example is like 5,000 pounds for your first selection, and then 1,000 after that for any other.
And that's all it is. It's literally a volume. It's
straight a volume thing. Yeah. Okay. Like they just want to make sure it's worth their time, right?
So does that mean all big beers all would have selection, or they don't care?
Not necessarily. Like if they don't care, this is kind of where that surplus comes into kind of like focus. Like if you just don't care about what you're using, theoretically you definitely get them cheaper somewhere else from someone who's just like long on a contract and is trying to unload them. Gotcha. And like we've seen some of those, like I get emails from all kinds of hop brokers every day basically. And we see them cutting prices on.
Just offering them up. Okay.
And I'm sure if you email them, you're like, hey, I'll take like a lot. They'll be like, cool. Like,
please.
Here's 10% more. like some of these guys are just trying to unload those contracts. Similarly, like these hop brokers, not all of them, right? Everyone's businesses run a little bit different, but generally speaking, it's like they have all of this inventory. Some of it's levered up and they just need to unload it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So then what would you say, just since we're talking about it, like how much of a difference does it make for the selected stuff? Because I know that's like in your stuff, I know you do the trips with Blood Brothers and Moon.
Yep.
And it's sort of like with our hand selected Citra, or if he's doing a collab, I know with Masorum, like it'd be like, hey, we sent our hand, it's like
that's cool.
A marketing thing, I guess you would call it. How much of a difference? Obviously, the fact you're doing it's probably enough of an answer, but just in general, like what is really the difference then between the hand selected stuff and then just like, hey, give me that hop?
It just depends what you want, right?
Right.
Like us as a brewery, we've always wanted to make beer that is our own. So like Badlands beer is ideally what we're kind of driving after. And selecting hops is just another way for us to differentiate our product. We're able to select a lot that ideally is going to taste what we think is the best based on what we've been provided, but maybe arguably just as importantly, different. And in a sea of IPAs, that starts to matter.
Yeah.
That being said, if that's not your goal, then frankly, like selection doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
Right? Like if the bottom line matters the most, and you're just like, you can get really, really good Citra, frankly, as a commodity hop. Like it's one of the better ones. The master blends or whatever that go to the most kind of like customers, like they're really good. Other varieties you'll see like the master blends, frankly, are less good. But Citra, like you can get like off the shelf, so to speak, Citra. That's like it's really solid. Yeah, it's a really good hop.
It's a fair comparison. Like now the way you're saying it, I didn't really think about. So hand selected is typically from this farm in Idaho.
Correct. Yeah,
is going to be the one.
Single lot, single,
single
day harvest.
As a blend.
Exactly. So like to give you an example, this past year we picked our Citra from Coleman hops.
Okay.
This is our third year selection. We've selected every year something from Coleman.
Okay.
I visited their farm last year as well because I'm like, something's going on here. What's going on with these Coleman dudes? Like they're obviously growing hops that we like. We just continue to select them. They're our most selected, and our second most selected is Sodbuster. No shocker, right down the street from Coleman, also in Oregon. So like we're starting to develop this weird, I guess, affinity for selecting Oregon hops. I don't know why. Maybe we just like that terroir. Maybe those growers are just really, really great, and they know what their windows are. Maybe they have great harvesting. Maybe it's all of the above.
Yeah.
But that's the type of thing that I think starts to differentiate your beer like in time is you're just choosing something that you like, and you might go back to something repeatedly.
Yeah.
And you don't even know what it is because we're choosing all of these blind. But when we do select them, we find out you're like, okay, that's the farm. That like in this case, like we selected Simcoe 2 years ago from them, and I got to walk the field and look at like just where the Simcoe came from, and I'm like, this is fucking cool.
That's cool.
So that was from the. Now you mentioned 2 years was when we did the last pod, and that was when you did the select. Because it was about this time of year. It was Feb or something, I think, last time. And we had the Select Citra, which is my favorite beer of that year. You did the Mosaic, and you did the Idaho.
Simcoe and
Idaho, was it?
Idaho was last year.
What was the other one then? Fuck.
Sabro.
Sabro, the yellow one. Picture the yellow one. Yeah.
That was an awesome lot of Sabro.
Yeah, that was great. That was.
But I think it was our Mosaic that year was Coleman. Sodbuster was our Citra.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then Sodbuster last year was our Mosaic and our Citra. Coleman was our Simcoe. This year coming up, it's going to be Coleman is our Citra, and I kind of forget the other ones. But like we just keep going back to kind of these two farms for whatever reason in this not this exact, but like this tight Oregon kind of region.
Sick. That's really cool.
So for us, that's what I mean. So for us, I'm like, it's cool that we're able to be like, cool, that farm, that hop seems to continue performing at that farm for us, and then you kind of get the specs, and then they've also been amazing, Coleman, for giving us like an excessive amount of detail, which I really appreciate, where they're like, you chose from this plot of land. Here was how the growing region went. And it's one of the reasons we really like to work with Freestyle as well, is because they have more data than like almost anyone when we go to select. But again, I'm like, that matters for us, for what we do. If you're looking for cheaper hops, like if you're just trying to have a bigger bottom line to some extent, and you're making like a bigger, like wider distributed product, it's like you don't necessarily need to do selection.
Gotcha.
You might get more flexibility with your contracts if you don't actually, and potentially even cheaper prices. Though I will say they've been pretty good at trying to keep the price down on the New Year ones.
Yeah.
They are not as cheap, obviously, as some of these guys that are trying to fire sale them.
Gotcha. It makes perfect sense. I'm thinking about like farm to table restaurants. Sounds like restaurants.
Yeah.
And like you could see the executive chefs. Like if you look at we were looking at that documentary. It was like 11 Madison. And remember he was like he literally was going to the farmers markets.
Sure.
And like smelling the mushrooms.
Yeah,
and
of course.
smelling everything and then buying and hand picking.
Yeah.
Which means you're like, cool. This is gonna do exactly what I needed to do. And
exactly.
It's perfect.
Same general idea. And then you eventually like if you're going to a market choosing mushrooms, you're like, well, I know this guy's got the mushrooms I'm looking for.
Yeah, the fire mushrooms.
And you just like you go back to the fire mushroom dealer, and then all of a sudden he starts telling you, he's like, "Yo, I like this one," and you're like, "I kind of trust him now." And you build up like a different relationship in your supply chain that kind of feeds back on each other, ideally too.
Yeah, where Boston Pizza's not doing that for sure.
Nah, I don't think so.
Sorry.
I'm
not sorry.
I think Boston Pizza is probably on that commodity side, right? Where they're just like, yo, the bottom line is the most important thing. Yeah.
So it would be obviously the vast minority of people who are doing the hand selection stuff, and and it's probably just breweries like Badlands that are like IPA focused.
Yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily have to be IPA focused. Like, if you're just a massive brewery and you don't make IPAs, you could still pull a lot of hops and therefore get selection. And then you might just, like, if you're making, like, let's say, I don't know, a ton of lager, like, you still could go to Germany and select hops there from those small family farms. You can get, like, the Tettnang, Herzbrucker, you know, whatever you want, Hallertau Mittelfruit, like, whatever hop you're looking for, you could still get to work in that beer by selecting it. And then same deal, like you can, like there are farms that are known for growing like amazing Hallertau Mittelfruit in Germany, and their hops sell really, really fast because of it, because you're, you know, whatever German lager you're trying to make, it's like, it's going to be better if you put that in it.
Yeah.
So like, it just depends honestly on what you're trying to do. Like I said, if you're after something like kind of what we are, where we're like, we're just trying to distinguish ourselves to some extent, and have a little bit more control of the process top to bottom as much as we possibly can, then it's really valuable. But again, if you're literally looking for like the best dollar value, it's not going to be in selection.
Okay.
So today that might change, to be blunt, in the future. You know, like there have been times where if you did not have a contract, you could not get hops. So even when we opened in 2017, we didn't make a beer with Citra for like, it was probably almost the second year. like we just could not get Citra. Then we couldn't get Mosaic, we couldn't get Simcoe. Like most of our first IPAs were brewed with like just whatever we could kind of get our hands on. And like a hot hop back then would have been like Equinaut or something like that. And they were fine. But I was like, you know, I have all these recipes for other hops, and I was just like, whoa, I'm really gonna have to work with what I got. But then luckily once harvest was over, like I think it was January 2018, we're finally started to be able to get some of that stuff in. And like it's not impossible, actually no, I would almost guarantee at some point we do return to a market that looks more like that. At the end of the day, these are proprietary varieties, so like the Citra, Mosaic, Simcoes are all owned by Hop Breeding Company, which is like a partnership between Bart Haas and Yakima Chief, and they do control the rootstock. And
what a great business.
Yeah, I mean, like technically speaking, it is like it's a monopoly, right? So at the end of the day, like they're motivated to return the supply to the demand, because they want to make sure that they're able to keep the prices where they need them to be to make money, obviously. So like this year where they just had another surplus, I'm sure they're not thrilled about it. And I'm sure they're hoping that in the future they're able to get the supply back in balance. Which like I almost guarantee they will, because like I said, they're the owners of it, so they can to some extent at some point just be like, look, you guys just can't grow this anymore. Like if they remove whatever your growing rights on that stock or something. But from my understanding, they're not at that point or anything like that. But rest assured, it'll at some point find balance. Like if we see like a massive drop across the board in hop prices, I don't think it'll be long.
until they just pull it. Like when you said the rights, just to be clear, because we learned about this. I don't know if you remember, we did did a pod in like 2018 with Luke from YCH.
Sure. Yeah.
And two hop farmers from the region who come out for Fuduni at Dunham.
Right.
And they were explaining what you were talking about, the proprietary, because I didn't realize that it might take 10 years of R&D to come up with a hop variety through selective breeding or more. Yeah. So obviously they're going to own. You can just pull it up.
I'm trying to be slick.
I know, it's okay. We're figuring it out, guys.
I know, it's just slowly.
It just drops, right?
Dropping. Yeah.
And they were saying, so you're saying then that because, say, YCH would own the proprietary rights to whatever Citra or something like that, they license that to the farmers, and they could be like, "You cut, we're done. We need to pull back." Is that?
That's my understanding of the business. Yeah.
That sucks.
Interesting.
So if they were like we license
for the
you,
farmer who
it could be. Yeah. So if they put a lot of money into it. I mean, again, this is a growers co-op, and I will say I'm a little out of my logistical how this exactly works waters right now, where I'm like, I don't want to like quote. I don't want anyone to quote me too tightly on this one in case there's a slightly different arrangement in the background that I'm not aware of. But generally speaking, like these are licensed variety to these farms for a certain amount of time. And I have no idea what those contracts look like. I didn't sign them, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if the owners of said rootstock probably are able to reserve the right to remove said rights at the end of the contract. Wow. So right now, like I said, right now they've been asking farmers to pull them out. But I don't know, like, if push came to shove and hop prices were cratering, I'm like, would they correct the market quickly by themselves? Probably. Right? So like, I wouldn't expect, like right now there are some cheap hops out there. I wouldn't expect that to last like in perpetuity or anything. It's just one of those like cycles where you kind of get some ups and downs. And like I said, for us, it doesn't even really apply because of the way we use hops. But if you are like, a brewer that's just looking for like large amounts of cheap hops, like now's a good time for you to try and save a little bit of money on kind of some of the hop deals out there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How do the older hops, because you're like, you could get them a year or two old.
Yep. Yeah.
How does that impact the beer though? Like, is that
It's fine. I mean, most of
it's not going to change the quality of it enough?
Not really. I mean, most of these are really, really well packaged. So like those old hops are plenty good.
Okay.
Honestly, like I don't even really like hops that fresh. We're kind of like, so like when we first started, we over contracted our first year on purpose. So that we could bring in our hop contract and then use it for a year and a bit. So we used it, I think we used it 16 months originally, and now we're just back on a 12-month cycle.
Yeah.
But basically we typically start drawing them like May to June roughly. So we like them once they've been pelletized for kind of like 6 months already anyways. Don't ask me exactly why. I truly don't know.
Yeah, like what? Don't ask me why.
Purely a sensory thing where we've brought in like really, really fresh New Year hop lots, and it's not that they're bad. They just don't seem to like deliver in the beer the way that you expected when you first selected them. And I don't know if that has something to do with like the pelletization process or whether there's just, I don't know, something else going on there. But that's just something we've anecdotally experienced, and we've just kind of accounted for that. And since we have, honestly, I think we've been even happier with our hop selections because by the time we start with them, they're in a better place than where maybe we would have in the past, where we're kind of opening them and I'm like, this doesn't even really smell like I remember. And then like a few months go by and you're like, oh, now it does. That was weird.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So hops are strange. So that was the first part about the hop side of things.
Yep.
And then the other thing that, because I had heard, not to that detail obviously, that just she was a bit rough with hops with the harvest. So then the grain side of things.
Yeah, the grain side of things I would say is actually more concerning than hops at the moment for like a couple of reasons. One, there's like some supply, like supply issues. Like we're not in a point now where there's just like so much grain everywhere in reserve where I forget exactly where we're at, but like we're not having a lot of good harvests around the world, generally speaking.
Right.
Like I have seen, so I think it was in North America. So like 2020, we had just like a wet year. High dawn wasn't a very good, like just year. Dawn is just basically stuff that like grows on it. for lack of a better explanation.
Like
it just lowers the quality of the barley. And then 2021 was the opposite. It was a lot of drought. And then basically they brought in a bunch of barley from other areas because they just weren't really in a spec that they were comfortable. Like the maltsters weren't comfortable with the specs. 2022 was like a high protein year. 2023 there was a lot of pre-harvest sprouts, so that's when it sprouts in the field before basically actually reaching maturity, which again kind of sends the specs out to whack, makes it really, really hard to malt after that. So basically like 4 years in a row now we've had bad barley harvest in North America, and then in Germany last year was a bad barley year, whereas at least 2 years ago it was decent. They're seeing wider spreads on proteins, and basically every time I read something now, generally speaking, from like kind of like early crop reports, they're kind of just like priming you to be like, just like be more comfortable with wider spreads on your COAs than you're used to, you know, like if the proteins are a little higher, like don't sweat it. If your beta glucans are a little higher, like just work with it. And truthfully, that's something that we've been fighting with a little bit this year in our own beer, is I haven't really liked. We actually changed barleys like about a year and a half ago, just because I wasn't happy with the supplier we were getting it from. Like honestly, I thought it was bad.
Yeah, fair.
So we changed suppliers, and that was when we were transitioning from the 21 to 22 crop year.
Okay.
And the supplier we changed to was using the older barley, and I found it better. And then they eventually switched to the 2022 barley, and I was like, all right, we just need to figure this out. So we started working with it a bit. So we've actually taken barley down in a lot of our recipes, and then some of our other adjuncts up to kind of compensate. Honestly, just because like the kernels are smaller right now, I would say, by a lot. We've had to tighten our grain mill quite a lot because we were getting a weird crush. It's just a lot of little things going on with the actual quality of the barley, never mind just the quantity.
Yeah.
And then there is also like, your exterior factors, like non-industry related. Like there is a war still going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. So they grow a shit ton of cereal grains. And also sidebar, barley is a cereal grain at its core, and it gets priced as such in a global market. So yes, we do use barley specifically for malting and brewing, and you're like, oh, that should only be for that. But it's like, if the price of barley, let's say, even if it's like the highest quality that would normally go into a malt house, drops below something else for animal feed, it's like they're going to start feeding that. So everything's priced like globally, and depending on where that price goes up or down, it'll get used for different things.
Okay.
That being said, that's not what's happening right now with barley. Just something to kind of think about. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and one of the biggest, actually, I think they might be the biggest now. Maybe second biggest. Anyways, Russia is also a massive wheat and barley grower. So the disruption over there has had some profound impacts on prices and just availability.
I was about to ask you about pricing then. So that would have drastically, or I'm assuming increased significantly in the last, how long has the war been on? 2 years, right? It's been
started 2022 maybe, February, something like that. Right. It's been going on a while, but I mean, they're still moving grain out, to be honest. It's just like, almost like the threat of it as kind of, and like they're not harvesting as much, but like they are still getting grain out of Ukraine at the moment. So
and the threat of it also increases pricing, because they're just like, this could
it increases shipping prices more than anything. Because anytime you're in like a war zone, for example, and you're using like a commercial freighter, well, you're gonna need now war insurance, which is crazy fucking expensive.
Like, I never really thought of that before.
Exactly. So a lot of the time,
there's insurance for everything.
There is, and the thing is, like, the cost is outrageous. So like a lot of times they just will stop shipping it, right? So I think, I'm kind of not up to date on what's going on over there anymore, but at one point there was a grain deal with Russia and Ukraine, so grain was getting out. Then that deal went away, for example. And when that deal goes away, it's like the insurance companies might just be like, never mind, we actually won't insure this, because who's to say Russia's not just going to bomb the shit out of this grain ship now? So stuff like that kind of matters. It's actually going on right now in the Red Sea as well, between like Israel and Gaza. They're like not putting ships necessarily through there, that
and they have people like seasoned ships and stuff like that.
Exactly. There's pirates and they're firing rockets at it and stuff. So now like a lot of shipping companies, like Maersk is one of the biggest in the world, they just won't ship through the Red Sea. So if you're moving through those like global arteries.
Yeah.
You have to go around them. Like you might
Yeah.
have to go around the Horn of Africa or something like
Yeah.
that, which not a good time, and it's way longer, so it raises shipping costs.
Yeah.
Or
I
if they
saw
do
something.
go
It
through the
adds
Red
like
Sea,
a
then there's
crazy
insurance.
amount of days. Or
It's insane.
something. Yeah,
And it's like some of the most dangerous water in the
Yeah.
world to travel
Yeah.
historically. So it's just bad news all around for shipping, which has probably had actually a bigger impact in general on grain prices. But like we use only Canadian grain, so you're like, it should be fine. But again, going back to what I was saying, it's a global commodity product. So as soon as the price grows up anywhere in the market globally because of anything going on in the world, it's going to go up obviously in Canada.
It's kind of annoying. Why does it have to happen? Sorry.
Well,
I'm like, why does that have to? I know. Sorry, this is kind of off now.
No.
Like,
I mean, it's just.
I thought if we had our own gas, say, so I'm saying if we used our own oil and then we used our own like grains and we used all our own things, isn't that supposed to be like the benefit? Because then you're not relying anywhere else. So then how come, like, is that just a random, like there's not a real reason, but things happen? Is that something where there's not a real reason to it?
I mean, I would chalk it up to just like straight up supply and demand, right?
So you're just like, hey.
You raise the price because you can.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like if, whatever, you're selling water.
Yeah.
And it's because I have a glass of water on the table. That's why I'm coming up with this example. If you're selling a glass of water at your house here and it's $1 and Buddy's selling it next door for $3, you're like, why am I selling it for $1? We have the same water source. We have we're providing the same product. Maybe I should raise my prices.
Yeah.
And that's basically the way like the global market works.
Yeah.
Is there is really no such thing as a true like local market when it comes to commodity products. Everything is global. It just goes to the highest bidder essentially, right? Which is like, if you look at like Canadian agriculture, it's like we don't actually use the majority of what we grow. Like we have this massive agricultural country and we export it because there are other countries that can't grow things. And in kind of like a similar way, they ship stuff back to us that we don't make. And that's how you kind of like sort out trade deficits and stuff, right? And that's basically the same deal with barley. It's like, they could sell it here. Yeah. But if like, let's say our government were to put on like, I don't know, some weird export tax or tariff so that it would harm the export of that barley so that we could keep the price low at home. You could see how that might be a problem pretty quickly. And the farmers would potentially start going out of business because they're not able to actually meet basically the higher price in the market that's called for.
Jesus. I know. It's so fucking like depressing when you actually it's so much more than people think because people see the can. Okay,
sure.
Because
you don't realize all the things behind it.
There's a lot going on in the background for sure, right? I mean,
I never thought about like the war in Ukraine and was like, how's that going to impact?
It's had by far the biggest impact. Like all of these growing problems and quality problems are like they're totally manageable and would have led to small increases, but undoubtedly honestly the war in Ukraine raised the prices the most. Like you could, if we trace back how much like our prices has gone up, it's like since 2017 to now. I wrote it down somewhere. I want to say it was like a 40% increase.
As far as the actual,
just like on a
cost
per,
to you.
like a per pound or whatever it's a significant increase.
Is not insignificant.
Oh, you had it at 1.6%. Is that what it is? And then now it's 3.1%.
Hold on, let me look it up. Did I write it down somewhere? You found it?
There's historical rates of CPI, but CPI I don't think is what you're talking about specifically.
Either way, I know it's generally that realm. It was like we used to spend about $29 on a bag of just like our base.
Oh, you told me this
malt
on text.
Okay, there you go. Maybe I didn't write it down.
Now it's like
it's 45 roughly, and like that's 2017 to let's say today. Like I just ordered malt, whatever, a couple months ago, and that's a significant increase. Yeah, point blank. But most of that happened roughly like 2021 to now. It was actually. I bet you, I haven't looked it up, but I'm like, I bet you if I went back and looked at 2020, it was probably like $31 or like $32, like somewhere around there. So like, like a small like inflation increase, honestly.
Yeah.
Like 2% here.
Maybe that's the CPI you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Like something like that. But then, these increases in the last it was basically the last 2 years where we saw like all of them. It was like, we were joking like between like myself, the Third Moon and Blood Brother guys like in a group chat. I'm just like, another email about malt price increases. And every time you open it, you just see like the destructive like increase And it was mostly the imports that went up the hardest.
Yeah.
Because you get tapped twice, right? Your commodity grains go up in price, and then also the shipping to get it to you goes up. It's gone down a little bit now, European grains, but at one point, like I didn't do the math on that, but it definitely went up more than 60%. Like it was incredible how fast that price went up. Some of it is starting to come back down now, so they obviously hit like a bit of a ceiling. But one of the important things about just about any time you see prices shoot up like that, it's like they're never going back down to where they were.
Yeah. Yes.
No,
it's just every time. It's just
always
that.
It's like that. We'll never see sub $30 bags of barley again.
It's like inflation. Eggs will, whatever eggs are now, it'll never get lower than that. It doesn't
matter. Like, you might see someone put them on sale for a bit lower, but it's like that's your new floor effectively.
Yeah. So then how do they balance? How do they like because people aren't getting paid more?
Right.
So like,
no, that's the whole problem.
So literally that's forever. An inherently flawed system. I think that's kind of what we were chatting about over text and the kind of what conversations Tiff and I have been having. Like I never looked at any of this. I didn't do economics or any of that stuff at school. So I never thought about it. And then it's now living through this. I'm like saying this, and you're like, I'm like, this is fucked. Like this whole system is like is rigged, and you're like, yeah, it's not made for us. Like, I'm like, sure. Like welcome. Shit, yeah, you're right, and it's really disheartening because it's like I know this we're talking about beer and all, but like this has a much larger impact just on like
of course
day-to-day life stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we're talking about beer, which is generally speaking like a commodity product, or not a commodity product, a luxury product for most people, honestly. But like this impacts other parts of the world that are honestly as rich as our country much more profoundly. Like when you talk about the price of cereal grains going up this much in Canada, it's like, okay, our dollar isn't inflating as bad as a lot of places in like let's call it Africa, where they have tons of currencies that are hyperinflating way quicker than us. And on top of that, they have commodities that are not hyperinflating, but they're inflating a lot in price. Like we're seeing it a 60% increase in Canadian dollar terms on barley. In like an African country, like it could be like 300%, 400%, 500%. And they're not drinking beer there. Like they're just trying to eat food. So for them, like that's just like a calorie thing, right? So like, we're talking about beer, but it is more profound in other places. That being said, it does still impact. It does impact the price of a pint for sure.
So on that, actually, because I know we've got a bunch of stuff. I was going to jump to the price thing, which is great.
Sure.
That was a good segue. Do you want to go?
No, that was the thing, because you're mentioning all these increases in costs.
Yeah.
But then I was mentioning to you earlier, I just don't feel like craft beer increases in cost year on year like I think of other products. So my question is why?
So, I mean, I have a few theories. I'll be honest. I don't know exactly why. I can tell you why we haven't increased our prices. So we actually haven't changed the price of an IPA since we opened in 2017.
Okay.
It's still approximately the same price, like $6.25 to $6.50 a bottle at that time, per can now. The major reason we've been able to keep it at that price is because we've radically improved our efficiency. I used to brew 100 liters at a time and then bottle it by hand.
Jesus.
Horrendously inefficient. Like we were never going to make a business out of that. That was more of like a proof of concept for us to hopefully be able to make a business later on. I didn't have any money. I was like 24. I wasn't starting the brewery that we currently have at that time, no matter how hard I tried. So that's why we started that way. But now we own our own canning line. We have, we make 1,500 liters at a time. It's still just the three of us. So we have, technically speaking, no staff. Exactly. And basically we're just significantly more efficient. So we're able to make more beer and we're selling that more beer as well at the same price as we were almost 7 years ago now. And the reason is because we're able to get more efficient. And I would say that's probably true for most of the industry. Almost everyone opens with not enough stuff. And then as you basically get better at using your equipment, find places to sell things, maybe get better, more efficient equipment, you are able to just find efficiencies, even though I hate that word, but it's true. You're able to make the product more efficiently, more cost effectively, even in the face of some pretty significant cost increases. That being said, like there's obviously a limit. And I would say like we have started to push up on that limit for sure. I look at our business and I'm like, we have quite literally maxed out all the efficiencies we possibly could. I'm like, there's no way for us to kind of like efficiency more, you know, like, right? It's like,
get more efficient.
That's it. I'm like, there's no more juice to squeeze out of this efficiency lime. Like it's at its max. Like there's still just 3 of us running, you know, like a relatively sizable brewery at this point. And we still do all the packaging. I still work the bar. Like, you know, if anyone comes on a Saturday, I'm working it. My partner Mike is working on Fridays. Like we're still doing like all of the jobs. And that's one of the things that we chose to try and be as most efficient as possible, is to continue doing a lot of the labor, because labor is also going up in cost quite a lot. But at least like on a production scale, I'm like, there's just no other way for us really to get more efficient. Like we have done everything. We own our own canning line. I still make all of the beer at kind of the biggest scale we possibly can. We even have like storage space now. So we're able to buy bulk malt, bulk hops, bulk cans. So like we're able to keep all those costs basically as low as we possibly can. Even, you know, even though it hurts cash flow to do it that way, it is cheaper. But I'm like, when I look at it, I'm like, there's really only one thing that can get more, or maybe 2 things that could be quote unquote more efficient, and it has nothing to do with efficiency. It's just, there's only 2 other ways that we can really get the cost of running our business down. One of them is obviously interest rates. Like we have debt. I didn't pay for all of this stuff with cash. In fact, very little of it was cash. Most of it was debt. And obviously like interest rates are really, really high right now. Some of it's well financed. Some of it we basically missed just due to construction delays and stuff. So some of it's at much higher rates than others. In fact, some of it has twice as high a rate as our best rates. But so stuff like that would obviously get some of our operating costs down. That's not an efficiency. That's just straight up like a financial picture thing. That is the type of thing that breaks a lot of businesses, to be blunt. We did plan for it. Like I was aware this was going to honestly happen probably in the near future when we were making these moves. And I was trying to quite literally short the dollar by taking debt out quickly and hopefully locking in a rate that was less than inflation, but didn't quite work out. But we planned for it. So it won't like crush us. But the only other thing that could potentially help, specifically in Ontario, is obviously like lowering taxes a little bit. That being said, going back to what you guys spoke to with Sean on the pod, it's like, he's 100% correct when he says that, look, like we started a brewery in Ontario, you knew what the tax rates were, deal with it. And that's not exactly what he said. I'm paraphrasing because I forget, but it's roughly speaking what he said. And if not, I'm saying it and I agree. So really, when it comes to why they haven't raised prices, why brewers haven't raised prices specifically in craft, I think it is because there just has been a lot of efficiency kind of building. Some of it is also just fear. Because at a certain point, like I said, we've hit a point where I'm like, there's no more efficiencies coming. Maybe we do see tax rates go down. Maybe we do see interest rates go down. And that provides us, honestly, quite a lot of like financial relief. And that's like, okay, maybe we can hold off raising prices for a little bit longer. But absent one of those 2 things, at some point, we are going to have to start pushing the price of beer up a little. How much? I don't know yet. I haven't given it a ton of thought. Right now, I committed to keeping our beer this price for the whole year still. So that was like our goal. But I mean, like if we see like another 20% increase in something, all of a sudden I'm like, all right, maybe we have to revisit it. And then like on the inverse, the consumer, if like they saw like tax rates go down, they're gonna be like, well, why don't you cut prices? And you're like, no. We need this.
We've been hurting for a while. So I wonder if just before we definitely want to get into the tax stuff.
Sure.
On the pricing stuff, is it specific to like basically you guys are IPA factory, as your shirt says. The breweries that are similar to you obviously are using obviously like things like oats a lot more, which I imagine is probably pricier than barley. For the mouthfeel and stuff like wheat and whatever. The hops that you're using are the more expensive type of hops that you do have to go out there and hand select, or you got to get the stuff from Freestyle or whatever. do you think that, like, obviously you've been eating those costs for 7 years coming up on?
Yep.
Everybody else probably, is that, from what you understand, all of the other breweries of your peers who do similar styles in this province have done similar things to your knowledge?
Roughly speaking, yeah.
Okay.
I would say also outside of the province when we talk to other breweries. Yeah, like everyone's
like holding steady.
Yeah, like I'd say the general, if I were to try and summarize it as cleanly and succinctly as possible, I would say that I think most breweries, and honestly even maybe businesses, if you want to make it more general, would rather have cash flow than risk losing it. Okay. So even if it's at a lower profit margin, it's more important to have that cash coming in than to potentially lose it altogether and have it at a higher price point that doesn't compensate for that loss. It's a risk, to put it bluntly, to raise the cost of your beer and potentially have that happen and like potentially price yourself out of, you know, like, I don't know, some of your regulars being able to pick you up every week and now they're every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks or whatever. Or like some bar that's just like, look, I just can't swing that. Like they're honestly hurting as bad as anyone and their margins are tight. So it's, I would say that would be across the board what I think most people are thinking.
So then really what you're saying is, tell me if I'm wrong, is that the market can't currently sustain any sort of price increase, whether it's on a per can level or on a keg level, from a bar perspective or from a drinker. Like 25 cents, 10 cents.
Like the consumer market won't allow it.
That's the thing. I don't know. No one's really tried, to be blunt. I think there's just a
dangerous thing to do right now.
That's it. I think it's just a general fear of doing it, for fear that maybe that it cannot be done. Like we all know, like how stretched everyone is, right? Like everyone feels it in their pockets on a day-to-day basis. I think that's part of the reason that. Myself included, like why haven't I raised prices? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like I go to the store every week and buy food. It's fucking expensive. That's what I mean. I'm like, I pay, you know, my gas bill, my energy bills. Like it's expensive. My house is more expensive than it used to be because of interest rates. So everything's more expensive. So like the fear is if you put your pricing up, that you might price yourself out of a customer.
Where it's like people need eggs, so that's why they get to.
They don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice.
Like,
or what egg, bread, all these things.
And even then, there's all kinds of like, you know, reports. It's like people eating less meat because they're like, I just can't afford it, so they move to like just honestly less healthy, or just cheaper, whatever, like bread or something, right? Or they eat one meal with meat instead of two or something like that. Like people are making cuts in essential areas. So I think like that's what the fear.
So
like the last thing you want to do, honestly, like as a craft brewer, it's like, look, I know I said we're a luxury product, but like we want to be accessible, right? To like ideally anyone who just wants to drink the beer. Like maybe that again means just like someone buys less, or maybe they just come and they have one pint, whatever. All those dollars go really, really far, like when you visit a business, regardless. But I think there's just a general fear of scaring away like people's final dollars, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And it's probably a domino effect.
How come cafes don't do that? Sorry.
They
don't seem afraid at all.
They got caffeine. They got a drug in there.
Alcohol I deem is essential too, but that's fair, at least for me.
No, for real. I wonder if then, like domino style, is in like if you put it up 25 cents a can, and then all of the other breweries in the region would do it because either it works for you or it doesn't, or kind of that example before you were saying we sell the water for $1 next door $3, and they're like, well if Troy's going to put his up by 25 cents, well fuck it, we will too, and then boom boom boom. So then it's more, but then if they don't, then you're the expensive guy.
Like you could end up
like
just
a risk either way.
Like you could end up just losing to someone else who just stays at the same price point if that bothers that consumer enough. And like truthfully, like 25 cents is probably just not enough also at this point. Like again, people haven't really raised prices in a while, and we've been able to swallow a lot of it due to efficiencies. But when the time comes to like raise prices, like it's either going to be drawn out over like a longer period of time with like smaller amounts, or you just kind of get it all over with at once to where it probably needs to be once you correct for the costs that you couldn't basically have added earlier. And I don't actually know which one's the best. Like one has more sticker shock for sure. But if you were to like, let's say we, I don't know, put 20% on our beer, like an increase in cost, which over the last, I think 3 years, if you just look at CPI, I believe we're just shy of that, like 19, maybe something like that in 3 years. Yeah. And like that's consumer price index. And we've seen way higher on our own just cost of productions. Right. But let's just go off CPI. That would have our beer pricing at, what would that be, like $31 or something, a 4-pack. So it'd be like $8 a can almost. No, sorry, that's terrible math.
Yeah,
$7.50.
Yeah, so like it would just add like, and that would be like to a standard IPA. And I'm like, and I mean, don't get me wrong, in the US they already pay effectively that price. So it's not like there isn't a precedent. This is really more of like an Ontario specific thing.
Yeah.
Like if you go buy like a comparable-ish, hazy IPA or whatever from one of the honestly like known producers in the US, most of them are going to cost that for a double IPA.
For sure. Yeah.
Like unquestionably, like yes, you have to convert, USD to Canadian dollars, but in Canadian dollars, like most of them are approximately that price today. So it's not like that price point doesn't exist somewhere in the world. It's just that I think people are scared to get there because our market has never been frankly close to it. Like compared to even Quebec, honestly, Quebec has producers that charge more. Yeah, for sure. And they have lower alcohol taxes, ironically. So
I know.
Yeah.
So even for our friend's wedding, we bought all their liquor for their wedding because in purchasing in bulk in Quebec was made like cheaper. A real significant difference.
I believe it.
Drove it out here for
for sure. So it's just one of those things. I think it's mostly just fear. Honestly.
Yeah,
interesting.
And I echo that same fear, which is why I'm saying it. Right. I'm like, I don't want to put my beer up that much in cost.
In case it's just gonna, like you said,
it makes sense. Like
that's it. I'm like basically I guess way forward we've chosen for the next year because this is sort of what I expect. Is I expect interest rates to go down at some point a little bit, and that'll provide some relief.
That's our hope.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I can make the case for the exact opposite as well, but
please don't.
But I expect at some point they will go down, and like that would provide obviously some amount of like cash relief for us and other breweries as well. That just have debt that has interest on it. And then there's the possibility of a tax cut, but I would never ever bank on that. That's more of like a cross your fingers, and if it comes, then amazing.
But you wouldn't bank the business on it type of thing.
If you bank your business on that, you are setting yourself up for a bad time.
Disappointment.
One of the other things that we talked about with Shahan was, and there's something that I never thought about, was like the types of consumer that are price conscious. So it started, maybe we should lift this up again. I feel like it's going down. It just keeps sinking. Such a heavy mic. It started from conversations both with Jeff from town, on the pod, and Shahan, both privately, like just on a call, and then on the pod as well. And what surprised me is that, like, I don't know about you as a drinker, but all the breweries I want their beer, so I don't even look at the prices because it doesn't. What am I gonna do? Like, not buy it. And I get the vast majority of my stuff, as you and I were just talking earlier about, from Durand here in Hamilton. And I'm used to paying a bit of a surcharge to buy them individually, and rather than in a 4-pack or in a predetermined thing, right? And that's okay with me. I'd be curious to hear about like we're talking, the reason, just to set it up, we're talking about the people who go to an LCBO, and the people who can get old style Pilsner for $2.35 or whatever it is, and then Steam Whistle's $2.65, and then like say Bellwood's Bellweiser's $4.50 for a Pilsner. I'm like, sure, I love that beer. It's one of the beers I've had the most on my Untapped. But I, once again, never even thought about the cost of that. And then if you look at the rest of it after actually during the podcast looking them up on the LCBO website and being like, oh fuck, like nothing's even close to $4.50 from Bellwood. So I'd be very curious to hear from them about what they're doing. And a lot of the stuff, if it goes, Jeff from town was saying if it goes over $4, sales just fucking tank. So I would assume that people who buy your beer, like myself, are maybe not as price conscious as someone who goes to an LCBO and is trying to get the cheapest 6-pack or whatever it is. So I'd be curious just to hear your thoughts on the type of customer that goes to Badlands, like what you were just saying before about you're not sure if like the market can sustain 20% increase or whatever it is. Like, I would have guessed that if I had to guess, I would be like, oh yeah, most people don't care because you want hazy IPAs. You're just going to go to the best, and everyone knows that it's not a cheap product.
Craig will pay $12 a can for you. That's what he's saying.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome. I got you. I was funding the operation.
That's the new price.
12.
$48 a 4-pack.
Let's say that now because everyone's going to kill me. But yeah, I'd be curious about where your take on that, because like most people will probably hear from, like, no one hears, I don't think, about the price side from a non-LCBO brewery.
Sure.
Doing arguably more of a niche product than a Pilsner or something that's available at the LCBO.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Like, the majority of our, like, for sure regular customer base, like, they don't look at the price.
Yeah, just like, take my card.
Yeah, they're just like, I just want that. Like, I would check me out now.
Yeah.
And like that's honestly amazing. Yeah. Part of that though, I think, is to some extent a lot of them have been coming a long time, and they also just know the price because it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And like, if we probably put, like I said, 25 cents on a can, I don't know if anyone would even notice, because it is like, if you're coming in buying 8 beers, that's going to end up being $2. Like, probably not a big deal overall. Where it probably starts to impact us is realistically like more in the summer too, where we get like a larger casual consumer base that comes out, kind of like in a more tourism-y like way, and they just either stumble upon us or in the area, whatever, or maybe they just came out to have a pint and a burger, and then they just grab a 4-pack on the way out, and then they're like, whoa, nope, that price is too high, and they walk out.
Has that happened?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Happens all the time. yeah. Like, our beer is on, like, in Ontario, we are on the higher, I don't know if we're the most expensive, like, on average for beers, but we're definitely close. Like, there's probably a handful that sell them at around the same price, but that's about it. And like, that's just the cost it needs to be for us to produce it.
You get what you pay for too. Yeah.
We like to think so. I mean, I don't want to belabor that point. We have a whole other podcast where we could belabor that point about how much we put into quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we think about it in more in those terms, frankly, because like your quote unquote hardcore consumer probably isn't going to care about $1, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
But your casual consumer that you are still effectively trying to get in the door, so to speak, as a consumer, hopefully a regular one, you may just not get at all anymore. And in our case, like, we're not offering much else other than beer and burgers, because that's literally all we make. So it's not like we can like transition them over to like a cocktail or a wine or anything. Like, we don't have the licenses for any of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we can't even like start the process of just like having them around, and then maybe trying to get them into our beer or something like that. Like, we really are locked into one product category for that sale, so to speak. So when we think about it in terms of like a casual consumer, though obviously I also think about like our hardcore consumer, which point blank is what keeps us in business.
Yeah.
Like, we have some consumers that have been drinking our beer for literally the whole time we've been in existence.
Cool.
And like, I consider a lot of them friends at this point, because I'm like, you guys are literally why we exist. Thank you. You know, like, you spend like $50 a week. I'm like, you know how much that adds up to in 7 years? Like, that's huge for us.
Yeah.
And like, yes, we could put another $1 or $2 on there, and I don't think they would say anything or whatever, but if they bring a friend or something, that person maybe won't leave because of sticker shock, right?
Gotcha.
So we're just trying to like, and this is where you get into more of like the quote unquote art rather than science of pricing.
Yeah.
Like, I can go all day on like a spreadsheet and be like, this is what it should cost for us to have a healthy profit margin.
Yeah.
But what can it cost? Like, what do I think, you know, in my like made up black magic pricing scheme?
Yeah.
What do I think the consumer is willing to tolerate as a price?
Yeah.
It's not going to be what I want it to be in my spreadsheet. It's going to be lower than that. But like, what can it be?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets tricky, especially when we start looking at pricing, like those huge stouts that we make now. Like, we've been working on those for over 3 years. So we're like, like the last one, like Inky, I'm like, we sold it for, I'm trying to remember what it was, tax in 2023.
The 3-pack with the glass, I think, was 84. I didn't even look at the price. Nate got it for me. And Chris picked it up from Duran.
Right.
And I was like, oh, for 84. I'm like, hang on, because at first it was 84, but I was like, oh,
that's it. It's a lot of money.
You're
like, that's only 3 beers and a glass.
And a glass.
And a glass. But it is over 4 years of work to produce that, right?
So it's like a vertical, essentially.
It is. And the glass it's from Rastal in Germany. Like, it's an unreal piece of glassware. We really like it as a spirit tasting glass. But those things are really hard to price.
Totally. But it didn't feel like at first, because I was like, Nate and I have a note on the an iPhone note we share, and we I owe him this much, he owes me this much. We just cancel it out. And at first I was like, but how much? Barrel aged stouts are not cheap, right?
No.
So at first, because I didn't think, I was like, what? Did he get me something extra? And I was like, oh no, that makes sense. Yeah. You got to think about it for a second, but it wasn't like, oh no, what did I do? I don't want this anymore. Right. I didn't give a. I didn't really bother because I know that you don't do these much, and that you were so excited. I hadn't talked to you about it, but I'd seen online the way you posted it was like you were stoked about the latest one.
Yeah, I mean that one was. That's like the culmination of our program that I've been trying to build, where it's just we have old, basically young, middle-aged, and old barrels finally. But it costs so much money to get that kind of program off the ground, which is part of the reason we also haven't been releasing a ton of beer from said program. Right. One, you need the space. Now we have close to 50 barrels filled with stout. Shit. And they're aged anywhere from 38 to 9 months or whatever. Actually, no, I just filled some the other week. A month is the youngest. So to put a program together like that, it costs tens of thousands of dollars, and there is no return on investment. This year, that's the thing. We have dumped some, some that honestly not too many, but maybe 2 to 3% of the beer, just because it was fucking shit. Okay. Point blank, is this is garbage beer. Put it in the garbage. And it's a bummer, right? Because barrels are extremely expensive now. Yeah. Also, the cost of malt, that's what a stout is. A stout used to be way cheaper to produce. Right. Now we're when we make a stout, it is almost 2 tons of malt. It's a lot of malt, and we only fill.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
ton.
2 metric tons.
I thought you were just exaggerating.
No.
Wow.
2 tons.
It's a lot.
Per bottle, per SKU, per individual.
Not necessarily. So we fill 6 barrels roughly, maybe 7 if we're lucky. Yeah,
for 6 barrels.
Yeah, because effectively the way you make those beers, right, is your recipe is how much grain can I put into my mash tun. That's how you decide it. And
it's going to boil.
But when it's full, you're oh, that's how many grains I can get in. And then when you run off the liquid, A, it's going to be the worst lauder of all time because there's way too much grain in there for that system, and 2, you honestly don't want a massive runoff. You want this really, really thick, syrupy, luscious beer. So you kind of just take your first runnings, and then for us we put a few hundred liters of sparge on top. Yeah, just to kind of keep it running, and then that's all we take. So we're not even really using the grains effectively either. We could probably rake out half of them and then put not even just put a little more water on top and make a porter, no problem.
It would still be good.
Yeah, it'd be a second runnings porter. It'd probably be 5-6%. There's so much sugar left in those grains. It is wild.
Why don't you do that?
Yeah, that's cool.
I find them very astringent. I've had some that are really, really well done, and I'm impressed, but I haven't successily done it.
The porter you did last year, that was fucking fire. That was not done like that.
No, that's just a straight up I don't really like second runnings. It's really astringent. You're extracting a ton from those husks that you don't really want anymore. So don't get me wrong, I've thought about trying it again. I might try it on a smaller system before I do it. But yeah, I'm probably not gonna do it. We'll probably just make the porter regularly.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about stouts? We brought them up for a reason.
Oh, right, because they're extremely expensive. So yeah, that. The reason I brought those up is I think we sold, like I said, that Inky, our new one this year for $23, tax everything in. Mm-hmm. But that same bottle again in the U.S. would cost way more. And there's for Ontario, all of those kind of bigger beers are, I would say, at a really, really good value compared to other markets in general. because those beers are, like I said, it takes almost 4 years to make that beer. Like the price of barrels has like gone wild, honestly, as well. Same thing, shipping costs to get them to us is high. Like if you live or brew in Kentucky, yeah, sure, your bourbon barrels are going to be cheaper, but like we have to get them across most of the continent to get here, right? Like it's a decent transport cost there, and like they've gone up in costs, like probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40 to 50% as well.
Jeez, wow.
So it's just another one of those things where it's like that beer, like those big beers, like I said, we've been brewing them almost 4 years. Like the cost of producing those beers this year is like almost 50-60% higher. Like it's a shit ton more.
Jeez.
And are you eating that still? Or
Yeah. I think the first year we sold our Inky bottles for $21, and like this year we're at 23. So I guess we've thrown on like $2, 10% cost. But also the beer is a blend of 3, 2, and 1 year old barrels. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is where we're into like the witchcraft pricing scheme. I'm like, I'm just like, I want a little more money for it because like I don't really know how to calculate. Well, I do know how to calculate,
like
but I'm like, time is a really hard variable to like.
Yeah. Well, we're service based. We only charge on time.
Exactly. That's the thing, and I haven't paid myself a salary like ever, honestly, as a brewer. So I'm like, I don't even really know what my time is worth. I've been working for free basically
for the entire time.
For 9 years because it took 2 to get it open, right? Yeah. So actually, I've been working at a massive loss. I used to put my whole salary in as well.
Jeez, oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, so I have this actually follows with my question. Sorry, I don't know if you have one in here. Okay,
no, you're good.
And again, we're service-based, so excuse my ignorance here.
That's okay.
But this, I feel like it also contributes to the conversation about why breweries close, because I'm looking at it in the mind frame of why businesses can close in general. And usually, efficiency is one of them, so whatever, your operations, but also like having more healthy margins that allow you to expand so that you can even create these efficiencies, but also like higher labor and all these things. So how in the world, so I just need to understand, how do you like scale up or expand if you don't increase the prices of your products and you squeeze everything? And this is like not knowing what your goal is for the
no, you're gonna be really disappointed in my answer.
Okay, and might not be too gross, so that's fine. But so I'd like your thought on it. But
you
then
don't
also,
grow.
Okay, you don't, because I just don't.
You might see the problem now, right?
Yeah, like so since you don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say like right now. Don't get me wrong. Everyone's business is run differently. There could be breweries right now that are expanding, and it makes total sense depending on what their books look like.
Yeah.
For example, like if you just bought everything outright cash, and you have like a super automated brewery, and you know every brewer is making 5,000 barrels per brewer, and things are just and you're selling it everywhere. It's like you could be in a great position to expand. That being said, it's like if you need to take on debt right now, it's like that's going to be expensive to expand. So when you're asking like, well, if you need higher margins to expand, it's like that is not the current environment, nor does it look like it's going to be in the near future either. Okay. Things could change fast, to be clear. Like I would say, like anytime I look at like, you know, projecting out anything, I always try to give my best guess based on what factors you're looking at. But one of the most important things to do is remain flexible. And if the data changes, so should your analysis.
Yeah. Okay.
So like right now, I'm like, I look at everything and I'm like, yeah, probably should not be spending money on capital investments unless you think it's going to lead to like a major productivity gain that can let your brewery stay where it is. Like, let's say you just have enough money to go buy a canning line right now, and you're already canning like 5,000 cans a week or something. And you're just like, yes, this is a no-brainer. Let's do it. It's fully automated. I got one guy who's not working enough. Now he's going to work enough. We're going to save money, not bring him, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like a major productivity gain could definitely make sense. But if you're looking to stack cash to expand, but you aren't growing anywhere, then it's going to be a tough sell.
So is it mostly, because I'm thinking, I'm like, there are breweries that we know that get larger and whatever, like Collective Arts or something. I'm just thinking, and before we even get to big beer, because that's my other question that I have coming up, but is that like, and I don't know how these breweries start, but perhaps it is like you have a good amount of love money or your own money that comes in, and that kind of eases it. Because it seems like debt is the big issue, is that like you're paying back.
I mean, debt is the big issue, I think, in every sector of the economy, point blank. We are a very leveraged economy. Yeah. So this is not like a beer specific. I mean, it is pronounced in beer just because it's a these are it's a small manufacturing facility, or in some cases a large manufacturing facility. But at the end of the day, it's equipment, and then also labor on top of it. Like craft is not that efficient. Like there is a higher labor input cost.
That was something Shahan said.
Yeah, it's way higher. Yeah. Like if you look at the way like Big Beer makes beer, it's like I use the example of like 5,000 barrels per brewer. Like I actually don't know the number, but I bet you it's a lot more than that. Whereas if you're a craft brewery and you have someone doing even 2,000 barrels per person, I would consider that a really efficient brewery. Like if you have, I don't know, let's call it a 10,000 barrel brewery and you have 5 brewers and they do all the packaging and brewing, I think that's a really good like brewer to production ratio.
Okay.
Like that seems quite efficient to me. But in Big Beer, that would, I guarantee, be horrendous.
Okay.
Because
like doing a lot more than
they have like some depends on the brewery obviously, but like some of these massive breweries have like 1,000 barrel brew houses, right? And then they turn it over 5 times a day. And it's like, all right, well, you're definitely making more.
Some of them have robots.
So exactly. Like you're not going to hit efficiencies at that scale the way that the big like true big breweries, small like conglomerates are going to hit. But in craft brewing, like there's a limit to how efficient you can get.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's like really, because I was just thinking about what makes people close and then what makes people, how do you scale?
Yeah.
So it seems like closing might just be, in the end, it's like the tax fucks you basically.
Tax is obviously rough.
It's really, and then the interest rates, because there's just so many closing all of a sudden. Not all of a sudden, I'm sure there's always been, but it's like, I think when we looked, it was like in Canada, it was like basically it's evened out in terms of
same
how
in
many
the US
people,
too. It's same amount of openings and closings for the first time since like the kind of craft beer boom, basically. But I mean, just speculating, I'm like, it could be a little bit of everything, but probably like debt or like adjacent problems to debt. So like landlord raising your rent, for example. Which is a debt. That's a debt problem.
Barn Cat had that too.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a debt problem on the landlord side, and they're just raising their rent because they're like, "Yo, my interest rates are up."
Yeah.
So like, I know we all want to shit on landlords, but it's like they do have a bill to pay as well.
Yeah.
And they are a business trying to make more than they're charging the renter, and it sucks, but it's just
what it is.
It is what it is. Exactly. It just sucks, honestly.
And the jump can be like dramatic and quick. Like even our mortgage.
It can be.
Like
our mortgage was like
like a day.
Well, you got to remember the interest rate rise is the fastest ever in the history of interest rate rise. Ever.
Yeah.
Like literally, they rose it from 0.25 to 5 in I think it was 16 months.
Right.
That's never happened before in history. So. You can't really like prepare yourself for that. Like you could have been like, for us, I was like, I know interest rates are going to go up soonish. We're trying to get this done before that happens. And then all of a sudden it was just like, boom, 1%, like we're 100 basis points raised, 100 basis. You're like, holy fuck.
It's crazy,
so it makes sense.
But then the landlords, for example, see that and they have to pass that cost along,
which makes sense.
And it is going to impact obviously that's it. It does suck. That's all it is. But that's going to obviously hurt everyone's bottom lines when, again, you go back to what we started with. The cost of production is higher. Now they're like, okay, also the cost of your space is going to be higher. Also, that debt you took on so that you could have equipment, that's going to be higher. So any one of these things is perfectly sustainable. Like one of those like major cost inputs going up, not a big deal. Everyone's like, yep, that sucks. Like things go up, whatever. But having every single one of them go up at once is obviously hard.
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
And what we're talking about, I guess, Big Beer is just scale. So they can buy more things, I guess, at lower prices. It's just because they're larger. So that's what the advantage they're always going to have over craft. Is that a simplified way to
pretty much.
say
I mean,
that?
Going back to like any other product, it's like, I don't know, computers even. Like, all right, if you can basically snap up the entire supply chain and make, instead of making 1,000 computers, you make 10 million. It's like, all right, well, probably the 10 million producers going to make cheaper laptops. Even if they're at better quality with better materials, because they're able to, go to whoever makes the metal and be like, I'm going to buy this much over the next 5 years. And like, all right, here's the deal. And you're just able to basically get the cost down all over your supply chain if you have scale.
Yeah.
And like 1,000-barrel brew house is big. Like, to put it in perspective, we brewed like 1,125, I believe, barrels last year. So it's like one turn on one of those big brew houses is our production for the year.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
4-story ones, that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't been to like the big ones, but we went to like Founders.
Yeah, we haven't gone to like a Budweiser.
I mean,
like
Founders is very big.
Yeah.
Like,
but yeah, there's bigger
floor
brewers.
to walk to the
That's
top
it.
of.
Yeah, you're on the catwalk and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to like,
It's fun to see.
it is pretty sick. If you want to kind of like picture how big the tanks are, just drive down the 401. Like, Molson brews right on the 401.
That's true.
Those tanks are how many stories tall?
Yeah. Yeah.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
I literally don't know. I'm like, it could be 10. Like, I'm just driving on the road. I'm like, that thing's fucking.
Do you know what?
I don't know why I've never looked or noticed them before.
We've never.
Or even
I
in
would like to
Montreal
visit
when we were.
Because the Molson.
You've definitely driven by them. You probably just were like, oh, some building.
I
And
probably
you're
just
like,
thought they were buildings.
those are fermenters.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I'm going to look out for that
So
next
insane.
time. Because, I've never.
Yeah, just I think it's like kind of like when you approach the 427. Maybe there's like I think it's 4 tanks there. Anyways,
Yeah.
keep an eye on it. It's a massive, right? So when you look at scale like that, you're like, that is more than our entire annual production in one tank. It's like 5x it, 10x.
so
I don't even know how big those tanks are, frankly. They're ginormous.
Yeah.
So yeah, scale matters there. And then they also have a very different process too. Like, they're generally making just like, honestly, like adjunct lager, right? So
Yeah.
they don't even have to turn over the brew house as much. Usually they'll brew like a higher alcohol beer and then just water back.
Ew.
Yeah, I mean,
What?
it works. Yeah. So you brew like a 6%
You mean put
beer.
water in it?
Correct. Yeah. You brew like a 6% beer, and if the target's 4, they'll just cut back the amount of water they need. Honestly, it's a totally viable like way to brew. We don't do it in our brewery, but I've had beers where people do it, and I'm like, they're made well. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But that's how they're able to keep really, really tight specs on their beers too. Is like you
Yeah.
just cut back with water.
Interesting. I did not know.
I mean,
that
they're
at all.
also extremely good breweries, to be blunt. Like
Yeah.
they know how to turn over the brew house.
Technically.
Technically, yeah.
Like that shit is dialed, but
Yeah.
the water back is obviously like a really good way to cut down on labor. You're just like, we brew 6% beers, turn them into 4% beers by using water, or if they really want to play like aggressively, you go down to a 3.5% beer, sell it as a 4% beer because you're allowed a 0.5% variation in your alcohol, and they can hit that dead on.
Oh, that's
so you could save
business,
even more.
alright.
That's what I mean. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't
Yeah.
actually know that they do this, but I'm like,
Why?
they
Well,
are.
yeah,
I would
makes
say these are
sense.
like massive $100-200 billion companies. It's like
Probably.
probably.
Yeah, it's like, you're probably doing that. Okay, yeah.
I love it. Did you have more stuff? Because I'm just gagging for a piss, and I'm thinking
Oh,
that
let's
we
pause.
could get a beer, and then we can
Let's do it.
move into like the next stuff. Because I know we want to talk
I'm down,
about
yeah.
taxes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so no one's
And I
gonna
still
miss-
have a few technical beer
I thought you
questions
might,
too.
so I didn't want to
It's just
interrupt too
interesting.
much.
I
It's
feel
just-
like I don't
yeah.
think I've sat with a.
Yeah, no, we can keep.
I'd sat and talked through beer like this before,
Yeah.
so I'm very interested. Okay, yeah.
Okay, we're back in a sec. Oh, we are back. Bladders are empty.
I didn't even go. No. I went when I got here, so I'm good to go.
You're good.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, beer time. I'm gonna let you introduce this one.
This is our Badlands Pills. I consider it our. Am I looking at the right camera?
That
Yes.
one right
Boom.
there. Boom.
House Pills.
Look at it.
Yeah.
Simple beer. It's only it's only 2 ingredients. It's Barquet Pills and no, it's 3 ingredients: Hersbrucker and Tettnang hops. I'm a liar. And yeah, we treat it really simply. It's a single infusion mash. We keep it nice and dry. It's only 4.8%, but it's like it finishes like, kind of in that. I forget what it is, 10-12. I don't know what that is in Play-Doh. 3-2 maybe. So yeah, finishes nice and crispy. Still has a little bit of body. Like, one thing that we like, obviously, in beer is body, as you maybe know from our IPAs. And we do kind of bring that through in our Pilsners to some extent too, without sacrificing any of the crispiness. But yeah, the reason it's our house pills, it's kind of like German inspired. Oh yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
There you go, buddy. It's roughly a German-inspired recipe, so it's all German ingredients. Takes roughly 8 weeks grain to glass, so it does have like all of our lagers have quite a long lagering schedule. None of them come out any sooner than kind of like 6 weeks. If we're really tight in the summer, maybe we'll let one out. So they'll get minimum a month, usually 4 to 6 weeks lagering. Seems to kind of be the sweet spot for us.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. Like, we could probably lager it more and it would get 1% better every week or whatever. But at a certain point, tying up a tank for 1% better is silly.
Yeah.
No. 6 weeks seems to be kind of the sweet spot for most of our lagers in general, in the way that we kind of like put them through our brew house. So yeah, this one's one of my favorite recipes. That's why it's our house pills. It's just like a simple drinkable, pretty malt forward, but still has like a good amount of hop character on the back end. We honestly whirlpool this beer as heavily as we do our IPAs, just so that it does have like a pretty cool hop expression. And I think that makes the house pills kind of like more representative of us too as an IPA factory. I'm like, this should be whirlpooled with 2 pounds per barrel of Herzbrucker and Tettnang.
And that's not a normal thing, obviously.
Sorry?
Most people aren't doing that. That's not like a...
it would be definitely on the high end for a lager, for sure.
And this is year-round too?
It is not year-round. We don't make anything year-round.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's seasonal or whatever, annual, if you want to say. Usually we make it once a year.
Just once a year?
Yeah, we don't make anything more than once a year. Most of our beers these days are kind of once every 12 to 18 months or more.
I noticed that pattern, which I love. Big fan of that.
Cool.
Because it keeps it constantly different.
Yeah.
But also the recipe is tweaked enough that it's not like the first time you're just slapping something together.
Yeah.
Like you're figuring it for the most part.
Everything is so far apart now that it cannot be the same the next time I make it.
Gotcha.
Because we have changed ingredients, everything.
Yeah.
So
that too, yeah.
Going back to what we talked about, hop selection. So all our hops are going to be different. Grain. Going to be a whole different year of grain. Our yeast. So we use, obviously, not obviously, people don't know, we have our own house yeast that we are serial repitching. So it's generation 184, I believe now. So every year, obviously, we put another kind of like 45-ish generations on that yeast. Actually, no, maybe 42 generations on that yeast. So it's changing genetically at that point. It's got different flavor, performance, and if we make our beer every month, or every year, or every 18 months, it just isn't going to be the same.
Gotcha.
What we're really targeting is just making the best beer we can every time we make it. We keep the recipes spiritually the same, but if that's the thing, I'm like, so like right now, all of our beers are different than they were like a year ago. We've taken up the wheat percentage in our beers because I wanted to reduce the amount of barley. And we've actually taken it up a good bit just because the barley kernels are so small. So we're getting way more husk material. Okay. So instead of having basically like a fatter kernel with just more flour basically inside with like this nice husk, now we have all these tiny little ones with more husk. And I just found it was giving our beer a stringency that I found unpleasant. Again, not a big deal, but the easiest solution was to use, for us at least, another product that has no husk. And in that case, it's malted wheat. So
Gotcha.
We subbed out basically like, 7%, I believe, of our grain bill that used to be barley into malted wheat. And I think that's made a big difference for us in terms of like softness of our beer. But a little shit like that, annually, like it's just going to change. So I'm like, yeah, like spiritually this is the same recipe, but also there's 7% more wheat this time. Our generations on our yeast are 50 generations further. It's a new hops year. Whatever. Maybe we pulled a hop out too if we found that hop wasn't performing. Like I was crapping on Galaxy the last pod 2 years ago. I'm actually back into Galaxy. We just went through a long trial period and I'm very happy with what we've played with, and I think we've finally selected a lot. So some of the beers that we pulled that out of are going to go back into. Other hops, it's like Amarillo. It's like that shit's gone. And we've replaced it with like Nectaron. So it's like it achieves the same flavor profile, but it's a different hop now.
Yeah.
So we, like I said, we don't even pretend to try to make the exact same beer every time we make it. We think about it more as vintages. Yeah. That's why all of our beers have, even our lagers, have the year on the can.
That's cool.
Because we consider them vintages. It's like, that's just how I was able to make it that year.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think.
Like, why? I like it. That's cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
With that, cheers, guys.
Yeah, sorry, that was a long intro. Enjoy.
Great.
Cheers. Yeah, great nose. Like tons of lemon.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of hops in it.
Did you say Tettnang and
Herzbrucker?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, two nobles from Germany. It's like lemony, a little spicy, soft. I poured out a lot of the carb already, so sorry.
That was
Great.
really yapping away. This is great, dude. I love that you guys are doing pills.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Continue.
go
Go ahead.
say?
Go ahead. No.
I love
You
pills.
first.
No, I was just saying.
I love Pilsners.
I like the best.
They're like my favorite beer. I've decided.
They're not my favorite, but they are my second favorite.
It used to be IPAs. I still love IPAs, but something happened. Where
I love IPAs.
IPAs are still my number one all the time, and I appreciate them still. But something happened in the last like 2 years.
I hear ya.
Where like when I started having like just
tired of it.
Yeah, Crispies started like coming into my life more. And,
and I mean Crispies overall, like in Ontario, got better too. I think that helps.
Maybe that's it, and I just started appreciating them.
Yeah, like people, I think Ontario brewing scene like leveled up their lager game pretty meaningfully.
Yeah,
like there are some like world class lagers being made these days in Ontario, and I think that helps people find like whatever their palate for lagers. And I'm glad we've been able to make some too. Some people really like only drink our lager, honestly. So it's pretty cool to be able like they'll come out, they'll drink a lager every week, and like that's it.
Nice.
And I'm like, that's amazing. Really happy to hear that. I mean, it's still a small fraction of our production. Like I think we make under 100 barrels of it between like 6 or 8 or whatever that we release a year, but I love having them, and I'm glad we're able to do it. It just took so long for us to have enough tanks where I could tie one up to make it properly. Similar to like stout, where I'm like, I've been wanting to do this for years. I just didn't have the space, time, tank, like all these smaller projects that I want to have going that I know aren't going to pay the bills, but I'm just like, I want them there. Lager's kind of one of them. It sort of helps, like they're profitable beers, so it's worth having them. And they definitely are amazing in the summer. Like they sell really, really well. They're a number one seller every week from probably like March to December, I bet you.
Really? What?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Well, you got to remember we have 10 taps.
Yeah.
One of them's lager. 9 of them are hoppy beers. so if you're a hoppy beer drinker, you're gonna split between all of those.
True.
So the lager generally dominates as a result because you're tagging that one. It definitely pulls its weight, especially in the summer.
That's cool.
Hell yeah.
From March onwards is pretty wild.
In the winter it's like we're really much more like it's basically just regulars, honestly. Like there are some non-regulars as well for sure, but it's like more disproportionately regulars. And well, they drink IPA predominantly.
Not fair. You said IPA.
I was gonna say like if they've been coming for years, it's like we were for a long time just making IPA from like 2019 to 2022 almost, or 21 maybe, like about 2 full years we only made IPA.
Right, which makes sense. This is great, love it. Crispies. I don't want to interrupt too much because you had
so this
a series
is great.
of questions you want to continue with.
Continue on the pricing. It's still business pricing. Okay. No, because now I think this is interesting because we're also drinking a Pilsner. But one of the questions that I have too, because we were talking about pricing, and then we had this conversation with Shahan too, just in terms of, again, like pricing, like say he was talking about like say the cost of a Bellwoods beer. And then like we went online and kind of were looking at prices for LCBO just to see the comparisons. And I'm like, okay, why does Bellwoods get to charge more? I'm curious of what this looks like. So you have a higher price point too. I don't know what's this Pilsner cost, for example?
$4.20 maybe.
Okay.
For a can.
Is that
plus
like
tax? So like $5 tax in.
That's higher than the market normally.
For LCBO for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
The highest in LCBO is $4.50 for Bellwoods.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're. I don't know. Is taxes in LC, right?
I thought it was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess we're a bit above that. We'd be $5 tax in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what makes your beer even? Let's say.
Yep.
And I put you as like you, and then say Third Moon, and there's like a few breweries that have higher costs.
Sure.
And I'm going to say, like, I can see and taste, but I actually would like to mechanically understand what makes a beer that you produce more expensive than, like, another person's Pilsner, for example.
I mean, the mechanics of it, there's only so many of them that kind of can be impacted. So it's like the ingredients you put in could be more expensive.
Yeah.
The time that it takes to make it could be longer. Those would probably be the 2 biggest things, frankly.
Ingredients.
So like something like a lager, for example. So if you just do like a quick turn 2-week lager, that's just not how we make it. Like I said when I was introducing this, it's like we lager most of our beers for about 6 weeks. So that means, with our ferment time, like it's a slow cold ferment, so it takes about kind of on the quick end, like 10 days, maybe 14 coming along. And so it's like minimum 2 months to make a lager for us.
Okay.
Yeah. So it ties up a tank. Like in 2 months, we could turn over about 3 IPAs. That being said, that's just the way that we make lager. I think the lagering time does matter. We specifically brew to compensate for that. Like those beers aren't very good at 2 weeks, but it's because we wanted to basically have, honestly, they're just kind of like, I'm trying to describe, like they're so grassy and like unrefined when they're that young that like you can brew a very different beer and get it out quicker, and it's totally like there's nothing wrong with it. It's good. And our ingredient costs could be identical in that situation. But then you have to somehow account for all that time. And it's not just time in a tank, it's time cold. So that means our chiller has to be running longer. The glycol group has to be running longer, which means pumps are running longer, which means I need to keep an eye on it more often. Are you spunding it? Okay, if you're spunding that, you need a spunding valve. So you need another piece of equipment. If it doesn't hit it there, then you're like, okay, now I have to top it up with CO2. Not a big deal. Honestly, it's pretty easy and it's not going to cost that much, but it's just another piece of labor that you're going to have to get into. We don't do this, but like another thing that could put the price up is if you, I forget what the friggin' terminology is right now, but if you take a little bit of fresh wort from another lager and you put it into your old beer so that you could carbonate it and then you package it with that. So like a beer that's like 8 weeks into kind of its life, or maybe 6, and then you put like a fresh beer into it. I cannot remember what this process is called. Anyways, it's one of my favorite ways of making lager. We don't do this because it's so much work. It means you have to have 2 lagers coming out like in pretty tight succession. And you have to be ready to basically take that fresh lager, have the headspace in the other tank to top it up. Then you're going to re-ferment it. You have a spunding valve. You're going to cap it. So it's just like, how much labor are you putting into the production process? What are the costs of the ingredients, and how much time is going to go into it? And everyone's calculus for that's going to be different. For us, like I said, we can only really make, we have 1 tank dedicated to lager, basically. We can only really make 6 a year. So we charge about $5 a can, because I'm like, well, that's a lot of time in the tank.
Well, it is,
And we do use,
even, sorry, you
said
a bunch of equipment that has to stay on and do stuff.
Like a chiller is expensive to run. We like, for example, like our chiller is really expensive to run because we don't have 3-phase power on the farm. So we have a single phase power line coming in, and then we have to put it through a VFD so that we can have 3-phase. So we don't get the basically efficiency benefit of 3-phase power. So it just ends up drawing more power. Now, again, we're not talking like massive, like maybe a few $100s difference. It really doesn't materially change it. But like, it is just more expensive, and it ties up your tank longer. And then obviously ingredients do matter. So like what people do to make their lagers, it's like you could use whatever grain you want. Like the grain that is this, like I said, it's Barquet Pills. So it's like an old heirloom German grain. It's way more expensive because it's from Germany. Again, we're not talking anything like crazy. We're maybe talking, I'm trying to remember. So like $45 a grain for like our house malt. This might be like 60, 65 for a bag.
That's still significant.
It's not, it's not cheap, right?
Compared to that, what was it, 40 something?
45. It might be like 30, 40, whatever percent more per bag. But again, we're using less of it because it's a smaller beer in this instance as well. But like you could use the cheaper grain, you're just gonna get a different result. But if you use the cheaper grain, you turn over your beer a little bit quicker. So instead of 8 weeks, it's 3 weeks. You save 40% on every bag of grain, and then you just push it out like right away. It's like, oh yeah, you can make a cheaper beer for sure. Does that necessarily make it, whatever? I don't know what the beers are. 350 versus 5. Probably not. But to some extent, like I think we should be honest. You are sort of paying for the trust factor. Like you kind of know what, like from really good producers, like let's use Godspeed as an example. Like, I don't really care what he charges. I will buy it.
He's probably one of the reasons I became a crispy. He actually is like probably the Godspeed, but Bim is like converted me a little bit more on that side.
He's got a very distinct take on it.
Such fantastic,
they are
exceptional,
and they taste like Godspeed, and like it's also hard to some extent quantify. So like yourself, like you're a service worker, you're like, all right, well, what does that R&D cost? Because like, why does his beer taste like his beer? Like, should he be rewarded for that, for developing something that tastes unlike anything else? I think the answer is probably yes. You could also potentially have like a special label. Like ours is not special. It just says it's very clean and empty.
It's clean.
I was just saying, like all of our lagers, we have almost nothing on, and that's by design. We want them to look very different than our IPAs that are kind of they're not flashy, but they're definitely busier. But like you could have like a more expensive label as well, or whatever. So there's a lot of things that could go into it. In IPA, you would have kind of the same variables, right? So how fast you turn out the beer. Most IPAs are pretty quick. Like for us, it's about 18 days to turn out an IPA.
Okay.
So we turn over our tanks every 3 weeks for IPA.
Interesting. I thought it was 2.
2 weeks? Some people do 2, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we're on the like, not the quicker end. I'd say we're like on the medium side.
Okay.
So like we could turn them out quicker. Like our beers, technically speaking, we could probably package them at 10 days if we really, really wanted to push it with like a couple extra variables, like equipment processes to try to account for some of what I would want to keep out of packaging. But like we think time spent cold is important. So once again, like we effectively lager every single one of our IPAs for about a week. So like we package on Wednesdays typically, but it spends 8 days at freezing. Because I'm just trying to get everything out of there, drop it out, soften up the body, and it just takes time. And that's just how we do it.
Cool.
So, yeah, we like it like that, and then we also give it an additional 2 days in the can before we sell it. I find the beers right off the line, like they're fine, but they're not as good as late. Like give it a couple days, they're better. In my opinion, give them another week, they're even better than that. But at some point, you start to again kind of going back to like even the lagering thing. You're kind of just spending time for the sake of time. Like is that 1%, 2%, 3% better? Is that really worth it? Just at some point, you just have to get it out there. So for us, that's kind of the time side. We're like on the medium side for how long it takes to turn an IPA. And then we're obviously on the high side for how many hops we use.
I was thinking the ingredients are the big one for the IPA.
Ingredients are definitely a cost for sure. So for us, for like a standard IPA, we're using generally like 6 to 7 pounds per barrel of hops, roughly speaking. Which is like, I don't even know what that would be, 20 something grams per liter maybe. I think it's 3.9 pounds per barrel. Grams per liter. That's the conversion. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do metric, and I just know it as pounds per barrel because I was a home brewer, and I still work in American conversions. But basically, like so like any beer like can be called IPA. It's not like in wine where it has to be a certain amount of certain grapes to make it or whatever it is. So I could make a lager with less ingredients and put IPA on it, and the ingredient cost would be lower, obviously. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's happening. I'm just using it as an example that there's just a lot of different ways for people to make something that's labeled IPA. So what we label as IPA and why it's so expensive, generally speaking, is we have a lot of adjuncts. So there's a decent amount of oats, like usually we're in that 20-ish% range. Now we have a decent amount of wheat as well. We're like, usually it used to be 7, now we're at like 15. So it's like 20. Anyways, we're like almost like 62% base malt now, and it used to be like 75. So we've moved a lot of base malt out, and that's typically your cheapest grain. The other thing about having these adjuncts is they're less efficient. So you just get less extract from them. So we've had to increase the size of our mash generally, not by a crazy amount. Exactly, because we just need to still hit the starting spec, right? So if we're trying to start at like 16 Plato or whatever, and we swap out let's just say barley for oats, you're not going to get the same extract from that. You're probably going to lose a point there, or like 0.1, 0.2. So you have to account for that somewhere. So usually it just means a bigger grain bill, which also means then typically, because those adjuncts they don't move through your brew house very well. They're very sticky grains, so you have slower lauters. So now you're also spending more time. Like our lauters they could be a little quicker. I honestly like them slow. Like I like a 90-minute lauter, but since we've upped the wheat percentage, we're closer to like 2 hours now. So, even on a double brew day for me, I'm like, well, I'm adding an extra hour of labor to make the beer this way because I wanted to lower the astringency by adding more wheat, by removing the barley, which is also slightly more expensive. So like these little things do add up in cost. But if you just do like 100% 2-row, and then you call it an IPA, I'm like, that's going to be cheaper. It's going to move through your brew house better. You're going to have better efficiency.
It's not going to taste the same.
It's definitely not going to taste the same. Okay. But, you know, like anyone's allowed to make, you know, recipes any way they want.
Of course.
And like, that's honestly what's great about it. It's like, if you can make like a really banging product at a lesser cost and sell your beer at a lesser cost, like amazing. I'm really happy to hear that. That's just the way we do it. That's the way we've developed our beer to kind of have, I guess, the Badlands profile. That's one of the things. Yeah. And then we also have like really, really heavy whirlpool charges. So we're usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 pounds per barrel for our whirlpool, which is like, you know, $600 to $700 a hops, right? Yeah. Just in the kettle, like quick. And then that also sucks a lot of volume with it, which is arguably the more expensive part of putting your hopping rates up. Like we put like somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2,600 liters in our kettle, and we only cast out to the fermenter about 2,200 liters, just because there's so much hot matter and shit in the bottom of the kettle that we're like, we gotta leave that back there. We don't want you. But we want like what came from you in our little like beer tea that we're making here. And then you cast that out into the you know, your fermenter. You get your ferment. That's honestly quite normal. You're gonna have, technically speaking, the same loss in a IPA as like a lager, just post ferment. But if you're gonna make an IPA, like you should dry hop it. But everyone dry hops with whatever rate they see fit. We like to use minimum. Like we don't make any hoppy beer that's dry hopped at less than 4 pounds per barrel. Like that is the lowest starting charge. You'll never buy a beer from us that has less than that. It's about 16-ish grams per liter. And like that amount of hops would be like in a normal beer for us would be like, I don't know, two grand maybe, somewhere in that range of like hops just going in. But more importantly, it just takes all the volume.
Right. That's the thing, it's like you're getting so much less of all the stuff that you're putting in there.
Yeah. So like the lager we're drinking right now, it's like we didn't even cast out 2,200 liters. We casted out 2,000 liters into the tank. And we yielded just under 1,800, like 1,750, 1,770, somewhere like that. These IPAs, we cast out 2,200 liters to the tank. Best case, like this very rarely happens, but when it does, we're like, this was a perfect canning day. You get 1,500 liters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a significant loss. Yeah.
Okay. So then to put that in perspective, say like, and I don't know how to say this, but like the average, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, like say the average LCBO IPA, and I mean that in the sense of like the IPAs that say you do, you know, people, all your colleagues, you know, Counterpart, Third Moon, and blah, 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 like, they like, what would be the number? And I'm not even calling out a particular brewery to compare it, but more like the types of IPAs that most people say if they're like an LCBO craft consumer, right, that they're going to get versus one from you guys. Like, what are those like? Is there like an easy way to compare those numbers? As in like, well, if we spent $2,000 just for each dry hop or whatever, like, an average LCBO, you know, like they probably aren't using wheat. They probably aren't using oats for the most part.
Truthfully, I don't know, right? Like there's, I guess it's so many. Of a question. It is, yeah. There's so many different recipes under the sun that, for sure, no one's making them exactly the same. Like no two breweries make the exact same beer, basically, right? Yeah. But like generally, I'm sure there are some honestly LCBO beers that are hopped at like similar rates, but if you're selling it at $3, like I doubt it.
Yeah.
Right. Or just be like straight loss.
Yeah, like I can't see, like I haven't sat down and crunched the numbers on $3, but it would be for us, for example, to package our beers and sell them at $3. I'm like, there's no reason for me to
be in this business. You just
get out of bed.
I'm like, we already don't make that much money, and I'm like, there's just no way. Like, yes, we would sell more, and like, I'd actually have to sit down. I'm like, I don't even know if that would return enough money to cover the cost appropriately when you factor in like the can, the label, your overhead, and everything like that. Yeah. Like I think if I were to break it down, I doubt it.
Yeah.
I was just trying to see if there's a perspective, because I think maybe there's like a misconception with. That's why probably so many pricing questions about why certain beers cost so much.
Yeah.
And like we were saying before, I mean, it sounds like, which actually kind of was very news to us, was that you have a lot of discerning price based consumers that come through the door as well.
Sure.
And just so you're just trying to look for a way to sort of like illustrate that.
Yeah.
To maybe people who are newer to beer
Yeah.
and are discovering
And wondering and like
what's the difference? Like if I'm going to spend this $6-7 whatever it was on a Badlands beer, or I'm going to go to the LCBO, and I don't know if there are $3 IPAs.
I don't know. I just chose a round number.
Yeah. But I definitely,
$4
I'm
IPAs.
understanding a little bit more because of the ingredients. I feel like that outside of even process, but even if I think about us, for example, and this is just easy for me to always compare things, is like, in our agency is higher than the cost of our agency services and social media is a lot more than the standard market rate.
Sure.
Yes.
However, we've worked with you're taking our knowledge, and we've worked with Meta, for example. They are the people who invented social media to a point. So you're getting all the knowledge we've learned from all these clients, and our equipment is better. So if we're on site taking photography for your video, if another agency comes and they're using an iPhone, we're using a $4,000 Fuji camera, for example, you're paying for even the cost that we invested in our equipment because we wanted to produce a better product.
Yes.
And then when it comes to how we write captions, how we create strategies, it's like we're taking all this knowledge and building it into something, so we can do things more efficiently, technically,
right?
And they're of higher quality, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and that's why you pay more.
Yeah, to some extent, you get what you pay for, right?
That's why I just feel like it makes sense to me in that way. Where
and there's a lot of intangibles that, like, we're talking about, like the raw, like basic cost of production.
Yeah.
Like again, I can't really factor in labor into our cost that much because I'm like, I haven't paid myself. So I like, I don't know, what am I supposed to cost? I'm honestly not sure, but like if I were to assume that I had a really banging employee that I couldn't lose, I'm like, I would probably have to pay them a lot of money to stay, which has to get captured somewhere in the cost. Or even to bring a couple other intangible like things to think of. You're talking about equipment. It's like, all right, so some equipment pieces that like I find important. I'm like, we bought a chiller that is way too big for us. Mm-hmm. There's a reason for it. I want fault tolerance. I don't ever want my beer to not be cold. When I want cold, I want it cold now. I'm like, we overbuilt our glycol loop. We oversized our kettles. We oversized our boiler. So like we have a 50 horsepower boiler. We can run every single one of our vessels full of steam in the jackets at all times consecutively. Mm-hmm. So it's like I could be heating my hot liquor tank, running full boil, and heating my mash tun. So it's like if I'm trying to stack beers and I want things to be exactly where I want them to be, no issue. If I want all of the tanks in my brewery to be crashing at the same time, which very rarely is required, but if I did, I could, right? And like those are just like process design considerations that we have in place that cost a lot of money because I'm like, I want our beer to taste a certain way, which means it needs to follow a certain process. And when I say I need, this process to happen, I need it to happen. And then there are some other like intangible ones that are like, well, like hop selection isn't free. Like we have to fly there. We have to go. There's hotels. There's all these things. And then, like there's probably everyone maybe has like a brewery where they're basically, you haven't had a beer where you're like, this is a bad beer. Yeah. There's a reason for that. Like, if it's a bad beer, you dump it down the fucking drain. Yes. Literally on Monday, I dumped a beer because I was like, this is shit. Yeah. And that cost has to be captured somewhere. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I was experimenting with Adora, and it didn't go well. But I did not serve it to you guys. That's the whole point, right? Yeah. It's like, so R&D also has a cost.
Of course,
and I do think that does get reflected in the beer, whether it's ours or other breweries that, again, like someone like Godsby, where I'm like, he has such a distinct character in his beers. I'm like, that has to cost something somewhere. Yeah. And I think what it ultimately always comes down to is like the consumer will decide whether that is or is not a fair price. And sort of that ties back into what we were talking about even earlier, where it was like, well, can you raise the price more? You're like, I don't know. Yeah. What do I think the consumer thinks? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if let's say you're making just like not a very good IPA and trying to sell it for $8 at the LCBO, it's like it's probably just not going to sell. Yeah.
At least not again. It's like the first time. Yeah. So try it once and then they'd be like, "Oh, this is shit."
You get a little, and just move along or whatever. It's going to be you're not going to make a business out of it. Yeah. So I think it's kind of like impossible question to answer because there are a lot of intangibles that I think a lot of people don't really think about.
Yeah.
Like some of those ones I just mentioned with even just equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or just like physically going to select hops or dumping beers because you're trying to always basically just push the boundaries a little bit and do R&D.
Yeah.
That have to be cost captured somewhere.
Yeah.
And then there are also just like, again, going back to the basics. You're like, well, sometimes you're just using more expensive ingredients.
Yeah.
Sometimes your labor's more expensive, sometimes whatever. Or like it could just be as simple as, look, you get what you pay for. If you think this is the best beer ever, it's like, that's just what it costs.
Yeah.
Basically. And like on our side, because I do make the beer, I also choose the pricing. I try super hard to like, again, go into like, this is what I want it to cost. Like, what do I think is actually the fairest price that I can leave it at?
Yeah.
Like as like a brewery owner and brewer, I'm like, I'm not trying to juice every dollar out of every person. I just want to make sure that one day we can be like a ideally sustainable business where we're all just taking home like a living wage. That would be nice. We're not there yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to keep pricing somewhere that we think is fair.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I love that. And I think because there are so many fantastic beers in LCBO. So I think that's also something that should be factored into as well. Like I think like Town, for example, like that's amazing that you can get like a beer that's that great.
Yeah. Like,
sorry guys, camera died.
Okay. So I was talking about LCBO in general because I don't want it to feel like, okay, because if you're not spending $6.50 or whatever, it's not a good beer. It's just like why there are levels to different types of costs. Right. And then when I think about great LCBO beers, I just think about Town, for example, or Bellwoods, for example. Yeah, of course.
There's lots of good ones out there.
And you said Square Wheels.
Square Wheels is awesome.
Square Wheels is great. It's only gotten better.
Yeah.
But one thing Jeff always said was like there was their Outside Jokes Pale Ale, which I think is like $3.95.
Sure.
And then he had one of it was either Square Wheels, I think it was like $4.25.
Right.
And he said the difference in the sales as soon as it hits $4 is like
so funny.
Yeah, and I mean part of that is also I guess we can go on a tangent in this direction. Is the LCBO is not a good place to sell beer. It just isn't.
Fair point.
Like it's a government-run monopoly, and they are the ultimate arbiters of what can and cannot be sold. And it is designed to be like a general, like purchasing experience. It's a very transactional big box store feel, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like if you go to like these awesome new bottle shops that are totally brand new, or just in other countries, where you go to like any. Basically, you can go to gas stations that have awesome selection, right?
Oh my gosh, in Vermont, like
exactly.
Crossroads,
right? Yeah. So there's all these places that are basically just these like craft bottle shops, basically. Even though they also sell gas. They got a few hustles going on. Maybe a Bitcoin ATM or whatever.
My first Bitcoin was from.
There you go. See, you got gas, you got beer, and some Bitcoin
from the shawarma shop,
on your way. But yeah, like these places are able to obviously like curate stuff, and as a result, generally able to sell it for more money as a result as well.
Yeah.
So like the LCBO is by design always going to have just a lower cost product, and I don't mean lower cost as in like it doesn't taste as good or whatever. It's just designed to be like get cost down as low as possible. That's why we're the biggest single alcohol purchaser in the world.
Yeah.
So we can shake you down on price, and that's what the consumer expects.
Yeah.
So like it would be very, very tough to grow like all of honestly Ontario beer in that package environment. Now there's some other efficiencies that are like not like I don't want to negate everything that the LCB does. Like it's convenient. You can only deal with one place and you can sell whatever, like all those things. Obviously we don't sell in the LCBO, so like clearly not interested. But mostly like one of the reasons is I'm like I just don't think we would do well there. Point blank. I don't think we would be able to sell our beer for the price point that we need, and I think it would sit too long. It wouldn't stay as fresh. We wouldn't be able to rotate SKUs at the basically through fare versus pace that we want.
Yeah.
Like we don't have a flagship, so I'm like, we are not built for the LC.
Yeah.
And these independent bottle shops, we're built for them, honestly. They're like, we have people that come every week. Same as what we're currently doing. They're like almost outposts for us.
Yeah.
Where they're like, they pick up every week, like in Duran, or like Will Bottle Brew, Princess, Bevy, and people go there every week and they grab a few cans. They pay a small markup, but someone brought it to them.
Yeah. And you get to buy in singles and have all these things.
Yeah, we do sell them in singles on site.
Okay, so
we're not a.
cool.
We're not. We've never forced 4-packs just because as a consumer I hate that.
Okay, so there you go.
When I'm traveling, I'm like, bro.
Yeah, because that's the one thing I know. Like,
I know. I'm like, yo, like if there's 7 beers available, I'm like, look, I'm not walking out of here with over a case of beer. I'm going to a couple of because I'm touring or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to a few other places. Like, I'm not carrying around a case. I just want like. Give me a 6-pack or whatever. Like, you have 7 beers? Cool, I'll take 7.
Yeah.
Like, just one of each. Like, I just want to try, or like maybe I tried 2 of them on tap or something, and I just want to leave with 5. Yeah. Whatever. When you have to buy 4-packs, it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And I just really, usually don't anymore.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I can't carry this.
It's too much. And we started doing day trips. So we used to always only do weekends. And then we started doing day trips because we got the next.
Oh, yeah. And then you can't bring it back.
Well, you can. You have to pay tax.
Right.
If you do a day trip, we've brought back a case maximum, and they don't say anything. So we're like, all right, that seems. I don't know if it's a case each.
It's supposed to be not in the day even. Like you're just supposed to pay.
No, there is sort of a thing.
Isn't it like even if it's? I thought no matter what, in the first 24 hours you have to pay tax.
I think you're right.
They just seem not to be
they don't
bothered. They're just not as annoying.
I think they're just like, whatever.
Yeah,
it doesn't set them off.
Yeah.
And then I'm going there last trip, and it was just like, it was driving me fucking bonkers. And there's a good spot called Brewed and Bottled in Lewiston.
Yeah.
And there's another one called One Stop in Rochester. So I went to both.
Shout out to One Stop.
Yeah, like crazy. They have Blood Brothers there. I remember last, like, good dudes. Mm-hmm. And that was the only way. And it was dry. I went to that other. When you said gas station, there was this one we went to. It's called like something weird, like Swingers or something.
Okay.
In like the basin area, somewhere outside of Rochester.
Oh yeah.
And it was so fire. They had everything. Like they even had like Heady and stuff, like in New York State. And then I asked it was just like a normal gas station. I was like, oh, do you do singles? And they looked at me like just with disgust. No. I was like,
you can see yourself out.
Yeah. And I did. And he did,
Do you know what? I went that trip. I went to Trader Joe's and I got one of all the Oktoberfest beers they had.
There you go.
Trader Joe's hooked me up. So like it was like
gotta love traders.
Yeah,
it's the best.
At least you could do the mix and match. I feel like sometimes you've had that. Least, so if you make someone do this pack, at least let them build it. Is like
like in like Burlington Beer Co. used to have the thing. They probably still do, where it was like you pay $2 extra, so 50 cents per can to do a mix pack.
Yeah, makes sense,
bro. No problem.
Yeah,
any
of course.
Day. That's the same thing I'm paying at Duran. So I'm like, and it's more than 50 cents a can. Yeah. And like, it's just so, it seems like I understand from maybe an inventory perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely harder for inventory, but it's not, it's not that big a deal.
I would have probably bought a full case from that place.
Right.
Because their range was insane.
Yeah.
But then they wouldn't break it. So I'm like, bye. And that would have been whatever, $100-$150.
Yeah. I mean,
down the drain.
That's their loss, obviously.
Yeah.
It seems silly in this economy to be so. Anyway.
Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, we'll see what happens with like bottle shops and stuff moving forward. Whether they're able to be less gray area, more legitimate-ish, because they're kind of like existing in a weird like licensing realm. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I hope for us specifically. I think that would be a good thing. I think it's good for. Honestly, everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone
like, there's nothing wrong with more choice.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
that's the whole point, is to not have monopolies where there is.
And it's
correct.
It
just because it's an old one that's been there a while, it's like, I know. And yes, they remit the money to the government. That's really nice. But like, if you buy alcohol somewhere else, they still pay HST. Like there's there is money there too.
It's still happening. You're still getting your
That's it. And it's not like you have to get rid of the LC either. It's just like, look, it's just they're gonna have to compete. It's not a big deal. And like they had a 100-year head start. Pretty good deal.
Pretty sweet.
That's not so bad.
Pretty sweet too.
Like other consumers that want Badlands going to LCBO anyway, because I don't. If Tiff goes in, then I'm like, oh, let's go take a look, and I just have a poke around to see what's going on. Yep. I very, very rarely buy anything. Yeah. So I go to Durand or I go direct.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not. They're not losing sales. I'm going to go somewhere else anyway.
No, exactly.
And if Durand wasn't able to, then I would go to you directly.
Right.
Or I would order online, whatever it might be. So it's like
that's the other thing. Like online, obviously costs more because you have to ship it. But
that's why I justify it, because it's either like I understand the way you sell, like and you do it pretty reasonably with the 12 and the 24.
We do our best.
No, that's like the next best way aside from doing singles. At least sometimes it's rarely 4 of anything unless you do the 24, or depends on that week. Right?
It depends, yeah. So like right now we're like low on inventory. So for example, we started the week, well, I guess today. At noon, we had 4 different beers available in a 12 and a 24 pack. Okay. And basically it's just divvied up equally. And that's all the beer brands we have. So we just try to give you the best spread we possibly can.
Gotcha.
But if we had, like 12 beers, it's like, I'll do a 12 pack. We never have 12 beers. That doesn't happen really. Right. But usually it's like, at most there'll be 8 in there. But we just try to give like the best pack we can put together with the most variety. And that typically works for most people. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I would rather... you guys, if you're like, I just want a beer or 2 beers, I'm like, all right, go find one of these bottle shops, go there. Yeah. Because like the minimum you can get from us online is 12. So you need to be ready. Okay. Yeah. So like you need to be ready to buy and drink 12 beers. Which like, don't get me wrong, plenty of people are. It's not an issue. It's just if you're looking for those singles, then that's what you should be supporting. It's like these new businesses that sell singles. They're more expensive, but it's going to be a lot cheaper than driving to us or having it shipped to you. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like we charge flat rate $15 shipping. That does not cover shipping. Like we've also held that cost because we want to try and keep it there. Yeah. It used to. It just doesn't anymore.
It's getting worse.
I know. It's like there was a time.
Yeah. Are we painting a picture, folks?
Yeah. That's it. I mean, like I cannot remember exactly what it is. Like we use a mix of like distributors to ship our beer, and like we do honestly a decent amount of shipments, which is why we're able to get close to kind of that $15 mark. Yeah. But we do end up every year spending like thousands of dollars more to ship beer.
Oh my gosh.
Like it's not hundreds of, like thousands more. Like sometimes people order beer, like if it's in the GTA, it's close. Yeah. Like we might be somewhere between 15 to 17 in the GTA for most deliveries. Okay. But like in Ottawa is usually like, 17 to 19, maybe if it's in like the greater Ottawa-ish area. If it has to go through more warehouses, it gets more expensive. But like one person in Thunder Bay orders it.
About to say
just destroyed. Like,
$35.
Yeah. But then like there's a lot of places you don't expect, like just outside of like Hamilton or kind of like, what would it be, southeast Niagara. Okay, like all of those areas are really poorly served, and it'll be like $35 to ship like 12 beers, and you're like, fuck. Yeah. Well, I guess this is on the house basically. It's not actually. Everyone's still spending money, but no one's making it. But that's just the way it is, right? Yeah. It's like we committed to 15 just because that's kind of the simplest way. You don't have to check through the whole process to be like, oh god, 35? No. Yeah. It's just like it's gonna be 15.
Also so annoying when
it's super annoying.
That. You're like, you're buying stuff and you get excited and the shipping gets out of control. Yeah.
So we basically just average it out at 15 and it is what it is.
It sounds like it's better, the thing we said before, where it's like better to get that sale
it is.
To not. Because there's still obviously a margin on the product itself. There is. Maybe the product balances out, so at the very least, hopefully it should zero out.
It
should. Which is not often.
No, I mean, every year that I've at least done it, I'm like, it's still profitable for us to do it. Yeah. So I do look at it. I'm like, we eat thousands in shipping costs, but I'm like, but overall, we do end up still making money on like at the 12-month period. We do end up making money on shipping beer, no question. Gotcha. Okay. And it also does have like, once again, it's always hard to factor these in, but it does have intangible benefits where we do have like regulars that have been buying our beer for like years.
Gotcha.
But have never been to the brewery because they live like 10 hours away or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're too far to be able to get the beer, but they still get it every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it may be. And then there are some people who are just like, look, I don't know, I can't make your hours. They get it all the time. And then they visit like 4 times a year. Yeah. So like there's all kinds of things like that. And then they bring a friend or whatever.
That's probably great. Yeah. You're probably that person. Like you don't go.
I don't visit enough.
You visit like twice, 2 or 3 times a year, but you always buy it.
So our hours
like
are
always have
our hours are really bad.
I was like, I know you can't make it.
To be there while we're open in the winter is pretty challenging.
I get it. It's like it's something that like not everyone's able to do. I mean, I just need to. We have a sort of like I think we just didn't always have a car, so it wasn't always like a thing in Montreal.
Yeah, of course.
We're here, it's still taking time to like. Oh, we could just go.
And I mean, you've got Duran too.
That's the thing.
And like, if you're like, look, I want a bunch of beer. It's like it's still cheaper to get it shipped.
Yeah, right.
It's gonna be $15 a guess
from here to there. I'm coming to see you anyway.
So we're gonna have
different. So it's like a different conversation. So,
but if we're talking pure economics,
the hang does not have.
That's right. Value. No monetary value assigned to the hang.
We haven't assigned that.
Yeah,
I need a beer. All
right, let's do it, man.
Tell us about this one, brother.
So this is Bike Tree. It's one of my, definitely up there is one of my favorite every year. It's our selected Nelson, selected Rawaka, both from Freestyle Hops.
Okay.
The beer is called Bike Tree. It's named
this
after...
This one's my glass. That was his.
Oh, sorry. That was a water glass.
Which one? Okay.
No, that's your water glass.
No, it's a beer glass.
You want to?
Yeah,
you want to drink it?
All
right.
I drink beer in that glass sometimes.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Beer's called Bike Tree. It's sorry.
No, we'll do the photo. I
Yeah.
just want to do one on the podcast at least
course.
together. Since we're all there. Oh, let me stand up.
Yeah,
You can keep talking about me while we do the photo.
Oh, he can't smile at the same time then.
Okay, everyone ready? You want to approve it first?
I'm approving.
Trey pre-approved.
How do you feel? Oh, you feel
I
good?
love it.
Okay, perfect.
Nelson Rawaka. We selected both this year from Freestyle. Two of my favorite hops, no question. Freestyle's amazing. And
Jesus, who do you think?
I generally don't drink the bottom of the can. That's just my preference.
I noticed because you left a little bit at the bottom of this one
always.
too. Yeah.
Okay.
Or Craig's like,
I'll leave it behind.
I respect it. Well, first of all, cheers. Oh,
Cheers.
wow.
Sorry, I had already started.
Okay,
Cheers. Called Bike Tree, named after the bikes that my brother-in-law put in the tree many, many years ago.
Like literally, I was like, where does the name come from?
Yeah, if you go park in our parking lot, you'll and look, I guess, at some of the trees near the parking lot.
Yeah.
You'll spot a bike.
I'm gonna look out for that next time.
There
for
you
sure.
go.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is so fire.
This is one of the more expensive beers we make because those hops are pricey. Rawaka
Yes,
is
Nelson Rawaka.
the single most expensive hop we buy by a good margin.
Okay.
It is
Delicious.
a hop that does not yield well. It grows poorly. I think it harvests, I'm trying to remember what it harvested last year. It was like 1,100 pounds per acre or something. And to put it into perspective, something like Columbus will yield like 22,
Oh my
23.
gosh! Wow.
Oh yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's a really finicky hop too. And one of the things I respect a lot about Freestyle, like their hops are more expensive. And even so on our side, why do we buy more expensive hops from these people? Where do we see the value? They have a ton of data, and they were brutally honest with us this year about Rawaka, and I genuinely appreciated it. So we had a contract for, I think it was 400 kilos.
Was it as good as normal or something, or just more expensive?
They left 60% of it in the ground. They just fucking plowed it under. They're like, didn't meet our specs.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So they're like, sorry, everyone's contract has to be reduced by 60%, just across the board.
That's because of quality considerations.
Quality considerations, right? So, and the hop is expensive because of the low yield and whatever, but it is one of the most unique hops out there. It has one of the most amazing aging curves. So I forget how old this beer is. Maybe a week, 2 weeks.
I think it was 2 weeks. I
2 weeks.
meant to grab it.
So something cool about Rawaka is I find it hits kind of this amazing like second life in the 6 to 8 week mark, where it turns into like a totally different hop, but it's like this like red berry flavor that is like, oh, it's so good. I fucking love it. Yeah. By far Freestyle makes or grows some of the best Rawaka, but it does cost like a ton.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have a long-term contract with them for it because I'm like I don't care. Like
keep doing it. I'll keep
like
taking
that's it.
Yeah.
Whenever you have enough, I'm ready for it, and I'm willing to pay for it, and that is what it is. And we do use it in a bunch of different beers because I really really like it. But yeah, it makes it one of our more expensive beers because both these hops are from them. So they are expensive. They are shipped from almost the furthest place in the world you could possibly get hops. And then Rawaka is just an expensive hop to produce point blank.
Yeah. It's
Spectacular.
delicious.
This is glorious.
Yeah,
I love this shit so much. And the Nelson's great, like a nice like the white wine gooseberry.
I
shit
freaking
going
love
on
their
there.
Nelson.
It's spectacular.
Yeah, we were very lucky to get to select from their Nelson this year. We always go for one with like just a whisper of diesel, just because I find if there's just a touch of diesel, like when you smell it, it'll always be fruitier. It just comes in on like the back end. It just like pumps up the aromatics, and it carries like that gooseberry note. Like the two things for me are very very close.
Diesel like fuel?
Yeah, it smells diesel-y.
Yeah,
Yeah, like fuely when you smell it. Not
Oh,
really
that's
like
hops itself,
I was saying, not really. Yeah, like raw hops. So like right now, I don't get any of that. But when you're selecting them, I'm really looking for that. I don't want a lot of it. If you smell a lot of it, I'm like I'm out. But you want it like it's almost like your secondary, tertiary like smell. If you get a little bit of it there, you're like, oh, fruity gooseberry. Oh,
wow.
Touch of diesel. You're like, that might be the one.
Hell
That's
yeah.
cool.
Never had that.
Yeah.
It sounds counterintuitive, but Makes sense. Okay, I'm just.
You just got to smell more diesel, you know. And you realize it's amazing.
That would be the episode.
Yeah.
If we weren't talking about such serious things.
Yeah.
So I just noticed it's about 5:30.
Yeah.
I know we have a bunch of stuff we want to get through, and I know you
Let's
have
do
somewhere
it.
to be. So where did we want to go from here? Is there anything else, Tiff, from your side here
I
that
feel
you?
like the only things I had were
was that
thoughts.
this stuff?
This
Like,
is like
yeah.
Troy's personal thoughts on like.
I just threw a bunch of stuff in there.
Yes.
Because you had stuff that I didn't know if you did. We cover the things that you had at the top of this
I
document.
know that was like the next thing. 'Cause I think we're going to talk about the taxes and then the economic stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so if we
we
want to go
didn't get to
deeper on
that, yeah.
tax.
Yeah, so we can go on the
that.
tax. The only, you know what? That's probably fine.
Yeah, because I think we covered a lot of
the
this
other
in
stuff.
the conversation. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
a bunch of this got.
There was a thing about like the breweries that were kind of aiming towards a hype consumer versus like the larger consumer.
Yeah.
We can come back to that.
Sure.
there was a bit of we had a conversation about that because it's an interesting thought.
Earlier,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe we do the other economic stuff first because it might be a little juicier.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can go through a bunch of it quick. I mean, I know one thing.
Don't have to rush it, but
No, it's not too long. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Ontario does have some of the highest taxes. I don't quote me on it, but I'm relatively sure it is the highest alcohol tax in North America.
Wow.
And if it isn't the single highest, it's for sure one of. Like, it's up there. Yeah, it's really, really high. Like, I know New Brunswick used to have a higher one, but I believe they've changed that.
Is this just Ontario beer?
Just Ontario alcohol tax.
Okay.
So basically the levies that they put on above and beyond, HST, basically. So I even put it in just like as clearly as I can here. I don't know if you guys... I'll just kind of read, I guess, it out.
Yeah, 'cause
but there's like...
folks at home.
Yeah, I was like, they can't
yeah.
see this.
Yeah.
So the reason I put like a comparison in this, so it's Alberta versus Ontario. The reason I chose Alberta is because they have a much more logical tax structure where it's tiered for starters. So it goes, like zero. I actually kind of forget the tiers, but it's like 0 to 1,000 barrels, 1,000 to 1,500, whatever, and it keeps going up. Ontario has 0 to 50,000. Not a very good tier.
That encompasses a whole lot.
Yeah,
It's
the
business size.
Yeah, I'm like 50,000 barrels is a lot.
Yeah. What's a brewery that's an example that you
50?
estimate that does 50,000?
I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure like what people's volumes are.
Okay.
I can say we're 1,100, so we're not that big.
Okay.
So you're paying the same amount as a brewery 50 times your size, or
Yeah.
producing 50 times the amount.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane. If you really look at that.
Oh, I know. What was it? BAOS. Maybe pre-pandemic. Their last year before pre-pandemic. I want to say they were like 47 or something. 48.
Yeah.
And then
Probably like Great Lakes, Nickelbrook-ish, or are they
maybe. I'll be honest. I just don't know about their businesses to speak on it. But like, I would guess
in that sort of zone.
Yeah, I would guess they're
BAOS,
probably on like the I don't think they're 100,000 barrels. But maybe, probably not. Like steam whistles in like the hundreds of thousands, like Muskoka's in the hundreds of thousands.
Right.
But like I would probably guess Great Lakes is probably in that like 20 to 50 range. I know Bellwoods, last I spoke to them, was under that. Like they're in more like the 15 range or something like that.
Really? Even with the distro they're doing it.
I mean, again, it may have changed. Like it's been a while. Like maybe they grew.
Like, I imagine they just see.
I'm like, I don't want anyone to. That's why I'm like, I can only really truly speak on my numbers.
Yeah.
I just finished my end year stuff. I know we did 1,125 barrels of beer this year.
Yeah.
Confident. Everyone else, I don't know. These are just going off like, we were hanging out drinking and someone told me a number.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, cool. I believe you, but I don't actually know. And that was a year ago or whatever, right? But those are like general ranges. They would be in the tens of thousands of barrels. Yeah, most breweries are honestly, I think it's like 90% of breweries are under 1,000 barrels. But we all pay the same tax.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not the way that you would think about your income tax, where it's tiered. You're like your first, I think so, whatever, 40,000 is like at one rate, and then then it's like 45 to 55, and then there's federal level has different ones, but there's tiers, right? For alcohol tax, it's not like, there are tiers, but the tier would be the equivalent of like everyone from 0 to $1 million of income. You're like Actually, it's probably even more egregious. Like, it's probably like 10 million. Like, the difference in like scale between 0 and 50,000 barrels is like, it's really like we're talking about like these breweries like Great Lakes. I'm like, that's a really big brewery. I don't think they make that much.
Yeah,
they might, but I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like that would be on the high end, right? So I'm it'd be like, oh, $0 to $10 million is your income tax. But yeah, we all pay the same rate. Alberta, they have more tiers, and they just have lower rates overall. So they pay 10 cents a hectoliter. Or sorry, 10 cents a liter, so $10 a hectoliter. A hectoliter is 100 liters. Mm-hmm. Very logical, very simple. It's one number. Yeah. It's just like, yo, that's per liter you produce. This is what you owe me. It's 10 cents. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Ontario.
Ontario. But let me tell you about Ontario.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. We have 4 different things, and they're all different numbers. Okay. We have the volume tax, which is 17.6 cents per liter. We have the environmental. $17.60. Yeah. So that one volume tax is already 76% higher than the starting point for Alberta. And we're at the first one. And that's levied just on all your volume production. Then you have your packaging tax. So it's just like every non-reusable bottle or can, which is an additional 8.9 cents per container. So if you're selling a liter of beer in 2 cans, for example, that'd be $17 more. So once again, we're already at like $34, and we're at the more. Yep. Then you have 2 different distinctions, so draft and non-draft, which I'm like, I don't know why we distinguish these 2 things, but we do. They're different rates. So the draft tax is an additional just under $36 a hectoliter, and then your non-draft is just under $40 a hectoliter. So all in all, if you sell canned beer, it's about $75 a hectoliter. If you sell draft beer, it's about $71 a hectoliter.
Compared to
Alberta,
which is
$10.
Oh my gosh.
That's more than 7x.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the difference, obviously, in sales tax. So they don't have sales tax in Alberta. Mm-hmm. We obviously do in Ontario. Yeah. I don't remember if we're 7 or 8, because like there's the GST, right? So the federal. And then we're whatever the remainder is of the HST 13%.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what the breakdown is, but anyways, theirs is 0, so ours is exponentially higher. Yeah. So every dollar or whatever they pay is taxed about 7 or 8% less as well, just like on a pure sales tax basis. So they just get to keep more of every dollar listed. Yeah. So basically, we're paying like 7.5 times more than Alberta in tax. And so on a $5 beer, for example, HST would be about 40 cents more, or 80 cents a liter, actually. So 40 cents a can, roughly, or another $80, right? That's what your sales tax differential is. So once you start kind of like totaling those things up, you're like, all right, we're already 7.5x roughly Alberta on I guess a can. And then the sales tax puts another 80 almost for a $5 beer, which again, we don't really make any $5 IPAs. Yeah. So you're like, this is a big difference in taxation.
No kidding.
Again, as Shan said, it's like, we knew this going in. Yeah. But when you look at it, you're like, all right, there's probably a little wiggle room here to go down. Presumably, you could go up, I guess, but I would prefer down.
Yeah. Why is that the case? Like, does Alberta have like, their government is doing something? Do they have some lobbyists doing something? Like, why is it such a massive discrepancy? And Ontario's the largest producer of craft beer.
Right. We're also the largest population center.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like you would make more already if you even taxed at the same, but then it's like, why are you adding all these additional taxes?
And to be blunt, if you like look at how much tax, honestly, beer contributes to the overall like government coffers, it's not that much. Okay. Yeah. It's like it's not irrelevant, but it's pretty close. Okay. It's just not that much. Like they probably make more from taxing people's like, and I haven't run the numbers on this, but I bet you it's true. They probably make more money on income tax from the people who work in the beer industry than they do from the beer tax. I would guarantee, almost guarantee.
So is that why they probably they're less inclined to want to pull it down because they feel like they're already not making much?
You know what? I'm not sure. Truthfully, I cannot psychoanalyze politicians.
Wouldn't do it.
The only thing even if I could, I wouldn't. The only thing I can say for sure is that a politician's job is to get elected. That is obviously their primary goal. And then once they're elected is to get elected again or stay roughly speaking, in a positive approval rating.
Yeah.
So the only time you're going to see something like alcohol tax go down is if they see that will benefit them towards getting reelected or increasing their approval ratings. That is ultimately what they're after. So if that one day becomes like a really popular political, for them to potentially move on, that's almost definitely the way you're going to see it go down. We do have a government right now that has been generally pretty good towards alcohol. They haven't, I forget what I just saw. They've indicated they're going to look at it, but they're not going to move it. Yeah, they're not going to move it down this year or whatever.
It's like 2025. I think.
Yeah, they did. It's, again, their job's to be reelected. The next election's coming up. That's surprisingly around then. So look, if they throw that political volley out there and they're like, let's lower beer taxes, I'm like, that's cool. I would love that.
And I'm voting for you. And you got my vote.
The thing is that, like you said, the price of beer is not going to come down with the taxes. It's not like producers are going
that would basically, and that was one of the things that the Ontario Craft Brewers Association, which to be blunt, we are not a member of, though I do like what they're talking about right now. They did put it out there. They're like, look, this would be more helpful now. Like a lot of guys are struggling now. If you again wave this magic wand, and it's not a magic wand, it's like as the old saying goes, exactly. As the old saying goes, word written by man can be unwritten by man.
Yeah,
that's what policy is. These are just stupid words on a paper. If you want to change what those words say or remove them, that is quite literally as simple as having a majority at the House to vote on that.
Yeah.
So it can be done, but it has to be politically positive.
It's like they have to be incentivized in
Correct.
some way to want to do that, which actually is where lobbying comes in.
Correct.
So you do need
the craft beer is probably the last industry that would have lobbyists, I would imagine.
Well,
I mean,
there's
the OCB,
right?
Yeah, and you have seen lately like the scale, I guess commitment to or amount of breweries going into the OCB has increased dramatically lately.
Yeah.
And it's not an accident. They're like, yo, shit, we need a voice.
Yeah.
And like, I'm a fan of lobbying. I'll be blunt. The reason we're not part of the OCB is I just don't want to get involved. I've got enough going on in my life. I'm just like, yes, I probably should, but I just don't really want to get wrapped up in it.
Fair.
But go you guys, please.
I think you need to join.
I don't want to.
I don't know. I know you don't want the smoke. Maybe you don't want to deal. But like, because
I got enough problems. But no, I love what they're talking about right now. I think Godspeed, please. Yeah. If you get the taxes down, I think everyone in the industry would benefit tremendously.
Yeah.
That being said, don't bank on it. That's all.
Yeah.
We do have to look at, like I said, moving forward, there's going to have to be price increases no matter what we do. When that happens, how that happens, how much they are, I don't know. That's some of the other stuff that I brought, like, economically with me. It's like, you look at all the macro data, it's like, it's not trending in the right direction for, let's say, volume growth, which sometimes can paper over bad finances. It's trending in the complete opposite direction, actually. Okay. So it's like, there's no papering over with growth that's going to happen over the foreseeable future, most likely. Now, that's not impossible that changes. I'm just saying I would not bet on that.
Yeah.
Like you look at in dollar terms or even volume. So like beer sales volume by person. So it's like since 2008, which is roughly when the craft beer boom started, it was 89 liters per person a year. As of 2022, we're at 64. So that's a 25% reduction in beer consumption across Canada per person. In dollar terms.
Wow, 1973 was a great time.
Yeah, people were getting ripped.
Yeah, they were getting
people were having a good time. Ironically, that's when inflation was also really high. So, like, is that going to be good for us? Let's see. That's right. Let's find out.
We'll see what happens then.
Yeah, and you can see it too in dollar terms, right? It's like it grew, and now we're going the opposite direction. But dollar terms hasn't fallen off that bad yet.
Yeah.
No.
So, like, since we opened, for example, in 2017, that's why I chose that number. There was about 9.1 billion in sales. As of last year, there were still 9.1 billion. But when you account for inflation over those 7 years, that's actually a significant reduction. There's something like 25% CPI inflation there. So if that number doesn't grow by 25%, you've actually just taken a 25% haircut, right? So real dollar value, there's a lot less money in beer right now, and less consumption. So though the number is staying the same, the value of that number has changed, unfortunately.
Like money. That makes sense.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and then the average sales price currently of beer, again, in 2022 was $4.3 per liter. So the average drinker is buying the cheap beer. That's why people are still price sensitive, I think.
Gotcha.
Or producers should consider price, because the overwhelming majority of consumers are still looking for the cheapest option.
Yeah.
Even that number is like hard to fathom, like $4.34 per liter. You're like, that's $2.17 per tall can. No beer is sold for that.
No.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know where these
How's that
sales are
possible?
happening.
Yeah.
But
I mean, maybe in Alberta.
that's from StatsCan. So I'm gonna trust the government data right
Yeah.
now.
Wow.
So yeah, that's why at some point here, it's like you look at all these things, and it's pointing in one direction. It's like, obviously the dollar figure is going to have to go up on beer. When that happens, how much that happens, I don't know. We haven't seen, we've seen some salary rises for people, obviously. Will that be enough? I don't know. Is that going to compensate again for how much everything else has gone up in price?
Yeah.
Historically, the answer is no, but that's just kind of the trend that I see, is that at some point, something like, I mean, we had like the Doug Ford dollar beer, which no one sold.
I was thinking about the dollar beer while you were
which
talking.
That was just
too,
like a minimum, right? That they put on $1 of beer.
Sorry, what was the point of that in the end?
It was just a marketing thing.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was like, oh, you can sell it. I think it used to be before. I'm trying to remember the exact details. I think it was like $1.25 was the minimum, and then he like changed it to $1.
Yeah.
And like some
One
breweries
brewery
took
did
advantage of it. Yeah, exactly. To get marketing, whatever, free marketing. Who cares?
Yeah.
But like, no one can sell beer for $1.
Yeah, it's not.
Period.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, you're saying,
Not
what does
happening.
it do? Like,
Yeah, it's
how's it
incredibly.
possible?
Yeah. But like, you think back, that was only what, 5 years ago? Not even.
Yeah.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
I was actually just looking up to see what the cheapest beers were in LCBO.
And
so the cheapest beers,
Max
actually
10.
you could get $2 tall can. You could get a $2.
There is a $2 tall can
between 2020, but by 2023, $2.35 is the cheapest
and
that
that's
ChatGPT could find from all the stores.
So then that's
all style
35 cents. So that's like a 17% inflation, which like roughly is same as CPI.
Yeah.
So yeah, things are just trending upward. Like the days of obviously like $2 beer is pretty much over.
I didn't even know these beers. Oh, but Old Style Pilsner, I know that one.
Was Old Style $2.15
even?
Yeah.
Ooh, damn!
Whoa.
Like right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, $1.75 for Stonewall Light? No, that can't be.
But that's a 275 milliliter.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, so it's not a full thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's like the cheapest tall can was $2.15 for the Old Style?
215 Old Style Pilsner.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there you go. I was gonna say the $2 beer days are almost over, but I guess they are over.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but then
like,
in the end, you're gonna get what you pay for.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
even Bush
of
and all
course.
of them are like start to become $2.40.
But I was gonna say, so when you see something like Old Style, like it went from, let's assume that it also went up around 30 cents or whatever over the last 3-4 years.
That's actually exactly right.
Okay, perfect. So then, lately, inflation's ticking back up again. We're in a period where it looks like inflation is going to continue going through cycles where we're definitely not going to hit 2%, and we might actually continue going up, which is
Great.
Well, this thing,
Awesome.
it's like it's going to lead to more cost
Chuck.
increases somewhere. That's just the way that things may change.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe a massive
not a
recession
finance
hits and we get deflation. I am unsure.
Who knows?
Right? I'm just putting it out there. It's like we just saw the last CPI reading was I think 3.2, 3.6. Was it? I put it somewhere.
At the top, yeah.
The top? So
it was 3.1.
3.1. There you go. So it's ticking back up. It's ticking back up across the whole, like all of the Western world, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a way higher than the target. Target's 2%. So
Okay.
we're like 60% above
Jeez,
target.
my goodness.
Like it's an insane difference.
Yeah.
Whereas we're all kind of used to, as roughly speaking, like adults in our
Yeah.
whatever ages we are, from like 08 to now, it's like we lived in a really, really low inflation period.
Yeah.
That appears to be over.
Yeah.
Right.
And it looks like we're going to get kind of
That's why money was cheap and everything was good and you got all the investments going and all the good stuff.
the great financial crisis was a massive deflationary period. And they cut rates and they left them there for a historically low amount of time. But that was also an anomaly in like financial history. And like, will that happen again? I don't know. Maybe. Like I said, I could make the argument both ways that the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But like the only thing that I feel very comfortable predicting, let's say, is that the price of beer will have to go up at some point here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to see more brew. Well, not otherwise. We're still going to see it either way. But to keep just like most breweries solvent, they're going to raise prices, and I think it's probably going to go the way that like old style does, where they're just like, all right, 10 cents here, 10 cents here.
Yeah.
And they just kind of keep trying to adjust as they go.
For the best way.
It's probably the simplest way. Like throw a quarter on a can, right?
Yeah.
And at least if you do that every year, like, I mean, I don't know what, that's not that much really.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think like you're going to keep up with
that's the thing.
Rest of your costs.
For old style, like that 15 cents is actually like kind of a lot, right? Because it's a $2. Let's say it was a $2 beer, and in 3 years it went up 30 some odd cents, so it's like whatever, 17% growth.
Yeah.
You're like, that's a lot. But if you put 30 cents on a $6 beer, it's like the percentage increase is actually quite a lot lower.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't quite cover as many costs as, which is also kind of like a problem for craft, I guess, is that you're gonna have a tougher time getting your margins up because you're starting at a higher starting point. So your percent increases are going to actually just be a bigger number, which is more painful than 10 cents. Most people, like price conscious people, like 10 cents isn't going to bother them. Even $1 might not.
Yeah.
But once you start getting into the multiple dollars over multiple years, it can start to be painful pretty quick, right?
For sure. It becomes too noticeable and you're like,
it does, yeah. It'd be like, for us to put like the same as old style, it'd be like putting almost another $1, about $1 on our cans, right?
Yeah.
Which in a year is kind of a lot, right? Like it'd be, so for a 4-pack, it's an extra $4. Like it's a decent chunk of change. But if you do start every year, let's say with like an extra 25 cents here, right? Every year, like just, we have to follow inflation.
Yeah.
Which
no
like,
one can be mad
fair.
about.
Yeah, I just wouldn't be mad as a consumer.
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I know
People for sure still get mad.
I know it sucks, but it's like you just be mad in the whole grand scheme of all the things.
Yeah, I
guess.
guess.
That's how
Yeah,
you
you
have to
can't take it out
treat
on
it. You
them.
can't, especially with small business, and that's probably why we keep harping on, okay, the reason that you're paying more, for example, is because you're, one, supporting a small business, but two, you are getting a better product, so that's why, across the board. So no matter where you purchase it, if it's craft, it's likely to be better than the other beers.
It's
right?
true, yeah.
So I feel like it's only fair if you love the thing and you love the person producing the thing and you want it to be around longer, that you just take it along with it. I mean, my eggs are more expensive, everything's more expensive, just deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
blame your government. Make your government pay you more. That's what you need to do. Is
make them take on less debt.
Don't blame the producer, blame the government.
Yeah, I mean, that's the easy out, obviously.
Yeah. Pay me more and your employers.
I mean, like, you look at restaurants, like, they've done a bit better job of raising their prices, I would say.
I feel like it's not as noticeable. There's a lot going on because you don't go to a restaurant and
I
buy
know.
the exact same
It does
thing
feel different, right?
Yeah.
But if you do look at them, I'm like, they've done a better job at coming out of COVID and just coming out of the gate with higher prices.
Yeah.
Because like straight up their margins, well, so are our fucking margins, but like everyone's margins are already so tight, but like they just had to go up.
Yeah.
And like now, I'm sure everyone's done it. You go have like, I don't know, burger and fries. It's like, it's impossible for it to be like under $25.
Yeah.
It's like for just any burger, like go to like a Kelsey's and like tax tip, you're like, man, how did I get to $30?
That's
I didn't even have a drink.
Well, I guess like even you think McDonald's used to be like $4 and now it's like $15.
Well, if you go get like a Big Mac meal or something, it's like, $15, $16 or something like that. It's high. Yeah, exactly. But like for whatever reason, restaurants have been able to do it. Breweries, like you said, I think your assessment is correct. It's like we have across the board been like, hold the line. But then you go talk to people in the industry and everyone's like, it is rough.
No one's really willing to do something.
Exactly. So no one seems to want to, I don't know, put it up. And at the same time, I'm like, it'd be cool to be like, yeah, let's all get together and price fix, but like also that is illegal and we should not do that. But I think everyone should probably, well, unless it's government sanctioned, then it's not illegal. That's different. But I think at some point everyone should probably just look at their margins and decide what they need to do. And probably they should do it annually. Like I probably should have put our prices up this year if I'm being blunt.
Right.
I committed not to.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, one more year. We can do it. Yeah. Again, I'm betting on interest rates going down, and then that stretches it another one, and hopefully we hold some goodwill, and then we can reassess things at that point. But, if things change, then maybe we choose to change as well. But over the next few years, I just think everyone should probably keep that rattling around in their brains that the price of goods will not be going down. Inflation was going down, but that doesn't mean deflation and lower prices. That's disinflation, which means the price increases are just slowing down.
Awesome.
Exciting time.
Keep that. I was just saying, it's very important to remember what the inflation metrics are and why they're going to continue going up, and that we've only reached a new floor. Like, we've had some new price reductions in our malt. It's like 50 cents, a buck. Like, it's fucking nothing.
Yeah.
Like maybe we get another one. It'd be another $1. It's like, it's been up.
So
like it's gone up like $17. Like a bag. It's like $1 is better than no dollars. I'll take it.
Yeah.
But like without like major demand destruction or something, we're not going to see like our basic costs go down at any point in time.
Yeah.
People's rents are not going to be going down at any point in time.
That's for sure.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Where we're at now, like if you're sitting here like waiting to return to something that was 3 years ago, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I would prepare for a new reality where things actually get more expensive moving forward.
Right.
Because
I see why the tax is so important, because that's like a nice relief that can come out of everything else that's going to go up, and that's going to happen, but that could be like a nice...
It is genuinely... like the cheat code for making businesses more profitable overnight, if the government chooses to use it as like an election platform thing, basically, because that's the only way it's going to happen. But like,
provincially or federally?
Provincially, the federal one's no big deal. Like it's $3 a hectoliter and they have it tiered as well. So at the federal level they have,
it's reasonable in comparison.
It's so like it's 0 to 2,000 barrels is $3.60 a hectoliter. Super reasonable. Okay. And then like 2 to 5 is $6 and something a hectoliter, and then 5 to 10 it just doubles.
They really tiered out nicely.
It's tiered.
Okay.
It's the way all taxes are done in tiers.
Except for
except for that one particular one that's a bit of a thorn in our side. So like the federal one, I genuinely have no beef with, like at all with. I'm just like, this seems very fair. Like more of this, please.
Yeah, please.
The Ontario one it's like the easiest way of describing it is like, it is like Sheehan said, it's like a magic wand. It's like you wave that wand, tens of thousands of dollars enter people's pockets in breweries.
Immediately.
Period. We go down to something like Alberta's, like if you're $1 million-ish business or whatever, you're talking probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40 to 50 grand differential. Like it's really significant. And like, look, 50 grand is 50 grand. Don't get me wrong. That might not be enough for some people, but like, 50 grand is
exactly.
Absolutely. Like that is the difference between, paying for whatever, I don't know.
That's a whole employee.
Yeah, absolutely.
That could be two.
I could pay myself.
That could be two tappers. You could pay yourself. Yeah.
Finally.
Oh my gosh.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah. So that's a huge difference. Just a quick question. I know this is probably not legal, but like, there's no way to base a brewery outside of Alberta and then like sell, right? It's because we can't do the cross-platform selling. I'm just saying, like
you mean the liquor produced in
like Alberta? If the liquor was produced in, if the alcohol is produced in Alberta and then distributed.
Yeah, so if
distribution's the issue, right?
Ontario is locked up, so to speak. Okay. So if you produce in Alberta and you want to import, you still go through the LC. And then when you import here, you're going to pay the Ontario taxes.
Oh,
and then you have to pay the LC fee as well to go through the LC. And then if you distribute through them and you have to pay their way, like there's just a lot of stuff going on.
I was just trying to think of like for example, start businesses in Delaware.
It is locked up.
And I was like, could there be is that the Delaware of the world?
It's not like a.
I mean, it kind of is.
No, it's not like a normal like service-based business, right?
We could do some shit like
that. Absolutely. Like you guys could work in any country technically, as long as you don't have to physically be somewhere, and that would work out.
Legally, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Whereas that's the one thing about breweries. Like these are community hubs. These are small manufacturing facilities. Like there's a reason that I think that marketing angle has been so successful. Because it's true. Like if you build a brewery in this community, like it's not going anywhere Like it has to stay there. You invested so much money into retrofitting the building, putting all this equipment there, basically trying to build up like this little social hub where everyone hopefully comes and hangs out, lets loose a little bit, has a good time. Some people host like different types of community events, whatever. Like it can really truly become like an event space for people in your community. Like you can't, for better or worse, avoid that. I would argue better. It's amazing that can be part of it. But like one of the downsides obviously is like, I'm trying to evade these particular taxes. And you're like, well, no. Like, that's the thing. Like you build it here. You need to be ready to deal with that.
That's fair.
And it might be the highest and I would like them to go down. But like I said several times already, I'm like, just be ready for them not to. Because they may not. In fact, like,
likely not.
Probably. I would probably plan for them to stay the same and hope that they go down, because then when they do, it's like more celebratory than disappointment. Purely for emotional management.
Manage your expectations.
You know what I mean?
Really. Keep them low.
What's the thing you always say?
I always say overpromise, underpromise, overdeliver.
Underpromise, overdeliver.
There's that, but the other thing is like if you set yourself up for the disappointment.
I always say you fall to the level of your expectations.
I think maybe that's
sure.
Which is like, you get so excited and you think something so big, but if you keep your expectations just chill.
That's right.
Especially with
and
you can use historical data to inform your expectations.
That's right.
Keep them real though.
Keep it as managed as you can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. This is all fact. Are we still? Is there more of the economic stuff? Because I know there's a whole bunch of graphs and shit.
I just put a bunch of stuff in there in case we needed it, but
okay.
I can't think of too much more that
side.
I had to kind of like plow in. That was like the reason I brought it up was actually this one graph. It doesn't really matter. No one can see it, but it was just like the reason I put this
on
one.
The screen if I want to.
Yeah, it's up to you. This is one of the most important ones. That's why I put it in there. Okay. It's the money supply.
The money supply one.
Yeah.
There it is. Do we do a screenshot?
Yeah, do a little screenshot.
A little screenshot.
And I'm gonna leave it, and that'll be my final note on this one, and then we can talk about other stuff.
There we go. I got it right here.
Oh, those are all the hop stuff. Whatever. Anyways, so that's the M2 money supply. M2 money supply is basically like all the liquid money in the economy. So we're talking like bank deposits, bank notes, just basic money that could be used on a kind of like a ready basis. As you can see, it's trending in one direction. That's inflationary. Oh. That's money printing.
I was like, more money.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
So like if you're holding dollars, as you can see, like look at 2002 to now. That's a pretty big increase.
No kidding. No kidding.
More importantly, honestly, look at 2013, or if you really want to like see a gross increase, it's the 2020, like it's the money printing during COVID.
Yeah.
The problem is like you can't really put that cat back in the bag. So there's going to be more of this moving forward. If they stop money printing, we're going to default on a bunch of our debts, both like at the consumer level and the government level. This is why I'm telling everyone, I'm like, I think you should probably plan for more inflation, because this is inflationary.
Yeah.
If you inflate the money supply, our dollar gets weaker, which means things cost more on the open market because everything's priced in USD globally. So if our dollar weakens to the USD, things are just going to cost more, point blank, because our dollar is worth less in relation to the global US dollar.
Yeah.
That being said, theirs is also inflating quite a lot, but they have a much harder currency than us. That's a whole other conversation. This is just the state that we're in, and it's going to keep going in this direction. We could do this pod in 2 years, and you're going to see the same fucking pop. It's going to be huge. The government debt's out of control, and without like some massive changes at a policy level, it's going to continue down that road, which means we should, again, continue to expect wave of inflation after wave of inflation for the next little bit.
Okay.
The spike is pretty.
It's pretty intense.
It's dramatic.
It's astronomical.
It is.
The
only other times that you'll see basically spikes like that, not necessarily in money, in money supply and debt, is in times of world wars. World War I and II, you'll see spikes like that. But now we're out of everything, and it's still spiking. It's not a good sign.
Yeah.
So like we're gonna go through some more waves of inflation. How bad they are, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not going to pretend to know.
Yeah.
But it is going to impact the prices of beer. Beer is like just made out of agricultural products, and there's no efficiency gains coming for us, right? That's the only way you can get the price down when the money supply goes up like this. There is no way to get better yields in the immediate future. AI is not going to get more fucking grains out of the ground or hops out of the trellises, whatever, right? Like there are no massive productivity gains to save us. There is no major automation stuff that we can do in the brew house. So to some extent, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place as breweries, as manufacturers, with what we have. We're stuck working with agriculture. And also this graph. So, plan for higher prices. I hate to leave it on that note, so we can end with something else. But I did want to make sure that we touch that because most people have never seen an M2 money graph. And it is arguably the most important. I mean, people can argue whatever they want, but it is arguably the most important graph that you can look at when you think of just the way your economy is going to do. Because if you're printing a lot of money, it only means one thing. One day it's going to turn into inflation. Like you can sometimes tamper it down a little bit. Depends how you print that money. But if this money makes its way out into the economy, it's like basically you have more money chasing the same amount of goods, price go up.
Kind of annoys us because we're like, we should have seen what was happening and how to fix a mortgage. But anyway, like, fuck me. Where was this chart? Where was this chart
when we needed it?
Why didn't the bank be like, hey, here's a chart to just show you where things are going?
Well, you see, the bank.
It's like, now we know. Now we know better.
The bank makes money from that.
Exactly. Now we know, like, you gotta look in some stuff yourself.
Well, I know the government specifically said, like, not to homeowners and stuff, but I know there was like a thing maybe in 20.
Well, homeowners too. They were like, do all the things. Money, it's gonna be low.
They said there will be no rate
time.
Increases until 2024, right? So you gotta remember, these are central banks. They're just saying shit. They don't know anything. Like, they have lots of data at their availability, but like point blank, central banks do not know what's going to happen in the future. They are not in control of foreign wars. They are not in control of government spending. Like the government can compel the central bank to print more money. By basically overspending having debt, and then the Bank of Canada has to pick up the bill. That's just the way effectively it works, both here in Canada, most central banks. So no matter how much they want to tame inflation, it's like if the government keeps spending, it will be compelled to spend more money at the Bank of Canada. And for the first time in history, both here and in the US, our central banks here and the Fed are bankrupt.
Actually bankrupt.
They don't make money for the first time ever in history.
Wow.
Right.
So what is money then in the end, really? It's like the bank doesn't
have money.
It's a big question.
No one has,
big thing.
Like, it's just,
anyway.
That's a bigger, longer combo.
Yeah.
It's more just that they used to remit money, so like they used to give out money to the banks, and the central bank would then remit their profits on the money that they were loaning out as the central issuer to the government, which they would then take into account in spending. That's gone. Like, we're talking like billions of dollars that used to be part of the budget that will not be allocated for. And with the losses that they're accounting for over the next 2 years, they will have to profit before they get back to break even, before they start remitting again. So like that money's gone for decades, basically, right? And that's in both countries, here and in the US. So once again, it's like there appears to just be money printing on the horizon. So how much, how bad, I don't know, but like we might have to raise prices. If I was trying to distill it down for us brewers, it's that we are stuck as manufacturers, unable to do anything about this. No productivity gains on the way. Like, there's just the only magic wand is the government tax cuts, which I don't see happening in the immediate future. So we just, like, it does honestly paint us into a corner. Where at some point we just have to start accounting for the inflation that we're seeing. These are agricultural goods. There's no cheap way to do it.
It's only fair. You say it that way, it's only fair.
So people should definitely expect in the somewhat near future price increases in beer.
I would think so. I would be surprised if you don't see some amount, like, let's say, I don't know, what year is 2024? Let's say in the next 2 years, like, everyone's still holding their prices the same. I would be surprised.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, well, manage your expectations accordingly.
Yes.
But also you're supporting local, so that's what matters. So.
That's it. The money does go really, really far, right?
Yeah.
Like if you
really
want to know,
does.
like if you want to buy beer at, I don't know, some big place or versus like, honestly, like our brewery, I'm like, you are literally like when you buy beer at our place, it's a little different than most, but you're on my front lawn for starters. But like,
yeah, literally you're at my house.
Usually I also accept your money with my hands. But like it directly like puts, food in my belly, my partner Mike's belly, my wife's my partner, right? So it's like you feed my kids, like it makes the world. And then we buy all Canadian grain, so we put it right back into our local economy. We do buy imported hops, so but not there.
Sorry.
We buy a lot of imported hops. That's just the way it is. But like it does go really, really far when you do visit a local business. And it's hard to understate the impact, honestly. So even if like you can't spend as much, some is better than none. I'm not trying to like guilt trip anyone into it. It's just if whatever you want to go spend $10 on a beer, like sit down and have a pint somewhere, it's like go somewhere that is locally owned, and they're genuinely going to appreciate it, especially at this time of year.
Yeah,
especially. We're recording this in January, so it's the rough, slow time.
Yes, I cannot remember talking to any brewery at this time of year ever and being like, "Yeah, we're killing it. Like we are just rolling in the money." Everyone's like, "Oh my god, I don't know if I can pay my HST."
Yeah.
They don't usually come after you for a while, so I'm just not. Maybe we can make it. Maybe we can just make it till May or set up a payment plan. Like those are the conversations you typically have at this time of year with not breweries, just breweries. It's like bars, restaurants. Everyone's just like
the payment plans.
How the fuck?
It makes sense.
So bonkers. How do we bring this home with a positive
spin?
Positive spin.
All right, so I would say Ontario beer is really competitively priced already at the current price point. So if it does go up, let's just say a little bit, like let's call it, 10% over the next 2 years, which is not like a crazy amount on a $5 beer. That's 50 cents. That seems 25 cents a year. Very reasonable. You're paying for what is already a great brewing scene. And it's still going to be cheaper than a lot of places, which is crazy. Like we were talking about earlier, like in the US, like you could buy all these styles in Ontario for less, like comparable styles, comparable quality, and you're gonna get them at a cheaper price, but in your own backyard. So I think even with potential of a price increase on the horizon, which, like I said, I would implore everyone to look at your business and think about what happens if you, I don't know, see 20% more inflation over the next 2 years and you don't raise your prices. Just a little, like not a lot, just try to keep up. And then I would implore the consumer to think about the quality of the product they're holding in their hand and whether 50 cents over the next 2 years is going to, stop them. Stop them from potentially buying that, whatever locally made beer or whatever. I think, like I said, there's a world-class scene here, point blank. If you want any style, like there's someone making it at like an elite level that you really do not have to be jealous of outside of this province. So even if you have to pay whatever $15 to get it shipped to you, like if you want it, put that money here rather than somewhere else, and it'll go a long way. And there is also that like OCB, like send your, I forget it. It's like they pre-fill like this thing.
We
send
did
it to your MP.
Keep your local.ca. No, keep your local.
Keep craftbeerlocal.ca.
But
we did it. It's like it pre-fills it.
It's so easy. I've been trying to encourage everyone to do it.
Choose your area, choose a brewery.
Exactly. Genuinely, I think that actually might be one of the biggest things you could do. Like if they received, let's call it 100,000 letters to all their MPs. That's really hard to start to ignore, even though they are all pre-filled, automated. Like some people I've spoken to have said they've gotten like replies from their MPs and stuff like that. But obviously we haven't seen quite as much movement as we'd like on that front. But if, like I said, if that message gets out there and you see thousands of letters going in, that can start to be like, man, this is kind of like, you guys hear about this? Like they're in the house and they're like, what's going on over here? Down at Queen's Park, they're like, you guys seen all the emails we're getting? And it's mostly staffers talking, obviously, because politicians probably aren't checking the email.
No, just staffers.
But like that is what it takes, basically, is like that level of thousands of emails probably to get through. But so if anyone listening has not done that,
keep craftbeerlocal.ca.
There you go. Go there. Send it. It genuinely takes less than a minute.
Yeah.
And
Just like you put your name,
if you
email,
got
area, postal code, you select your favorite brewery based on the postal code that it'll deliver you, and then you just press fucking go.
That's it. And if you got like 6 people in the house or whatever, feel free to fill it out for them too.
I think everyone can.
You know what I mean?
We're going to fill it out for the podcast.
That's it. I'm going to pick every brewery in Hamilton.
Barrington, our dog has an email address, so we might just put that in there too.
Do you need an email address?
He has an email.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right, you need an email.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, the more people that do it, the better.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we'd leave it on that note. I think it's pretty positive.
I think
That's
so.
positive.
And you're right, though. I will say, when you're talking about world-class beers, I do want to say that when we do travel and Craig goes around, I feel like that's changed a lot, even where you were, like, say, 5 to 7 years ago.
Absolutely.
He'll be like, this is not better than Badlands, really. Like, it's fine. But you
Every
will
time,
say,
it's
I mean,
annoying.
it's like he'll say things like that very specifically, like, okay, I'm here and it's great, but it's not like so much better.
It's
than...
fun
Cool.
to explore.
It's fun. No, but he says that. It's
awesome.
become more. Before I felt like it was like chasing the beers you wanted, and it was this chase. And now, like, you often say
There are a
that
few things that are
you
on
feel
par.
satiated, or
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, it's the same
What you
thing.
said.
It's so now it's fun. It's not as much like I'm not gonna get this at home.
Correct.
You're just
Yeah,
doing
that's
it for
perfect.
the activity.
Yeah,
of it.
we're not starved here at all.
Yeah.
Like
At
you
all,
said,
at
elite,
all.
Everything you said was money. Like the elite levels of every style are available here in this
Yeah,
province. You can
pick
say
a
the same
style
about
and
Quebec, too.
you can go.
Yeah.
You can go get it. No problem,
Quebec
right?
as well.
problem.
Yeah.
Like people that are like, I don't know, like mixed firm. It's like there are breweries that literally crush it in Ontario and in Quebec.
Yeah.
Like world class.
Yeah. World class.
Lagers, you have multiple world class. IPA options. You want like some English style stuff? Like there are breweries that rock that. Like you have options for everything.
Stouts,
absolutely.
smoothies,
That's
like,
it. They're
you
options.
name it. You want a sick brown ale, like name like 10.
That's it.
Like
Absolutely.
everything you need is here, and we hadn't traveled since beginning of COVID. I think
Yeah.
it was right when we were in Vermont, and like Tiff said, everything was going there. I felt like it was still good back then, but it was like, I'm going to Vermont, I'm going to New York, whatever.
Yeah.
And then now, after traveling in 2023, and now I was like, the exploration was lit, but the vast majority was not better than what we had at home, and it didn't used to be like that. So I don't think down there got worse as much as we got better.
I agree. I mean, since we've been in brewing 2017 or whatever, like the Ontario craft beer scene has changed dramatically, and like for the better. Like the breweries that are making beer are making a really, really good beer here.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Sick, man.
it's important to remember it's really competitively priced.
Don't forget.
Don't forget. It's actually not that expensive.
It's truly not, because you got to add, at the very least, you got to add 30% when you go down there.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And then if you go to a bottle shop, you know
Yep.
it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah,
and
of course.
blah, 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 so it just adds up
Yeah.
and up.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to wrap this up, brother. Thank you so much for coming down and
Yeah, no problem.
sitting
Thanks
here
for
for
having me.
2 hours and 57 minutes.
Nailed it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
like I knew it would be a little bit longer, but like I feel like this was a worthy conversation, and like we've never done anything like this deep in this before. Now we've had like in a short period of time like a series of conversations that were like just this year, just in January actually, and it's pretty cool. And the response from people, I think people are going to really enjoy it. Well, enjoy it because it's interesting information, and maybe the result of the information is a little not so enjoyable because of the reality of shit. But like,
It's not trying to be
numbers.
I was saying it's not trying to be negative. It can be positive.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's just
it's just how you perceive
saying,
and what's going on. So thank you for just putting the effort into like putting that information together and delivering that.
Yeah,
And
I didn't want to be
cool.
completely clueless on everything, so I brought a little bit of info. I was like, I'm gonna forget the
A little
tax
bit.
rates.
You weren't gonna have that off the dome.
Nah.
If anyone, obviously, we're gonna have a Badlands podcast in the next month. I think we said it was. So we're gonna talk.
Yeah, I
about
think it's next month.
Next
Yeah.
month. So with Nate, we're gonna talk about the
Yeah.
beer.
We're gonna talk any about this.
No, we probably. Will.
Yeah, maybe a little, but
Just a
mostly beer.
But if people want to email you to get excited, mad, I was going to joke and get mad about the price increase in 2 years right now. They want to like, where can everyone find you online? I'm trying
They
to
can
find
DM
Find us at Badlands Brewing on all social medias, except for I think Twitter now X. I think that's Badlands Brew Co. And then badlandsbrewing.ca. We're it's unfortunately us that still answers everything. So if you do have any questions about anything, you want to be. I mean, my wife mostly answers it, so don't be too mean, but she'll pass it along to me. But yeah, if you guys want to reach out at any questions, comments, concerns, I don't know. I'm more than happy to listen, talk back. If you guys want to look at some of the stuff that I have looked at, feel free to let us know.
Yeah,
and I'll try to get you the information if you guys do reach out. OCB, no offense, I still don't want to be part of it. I just want leave me out of politics.
But you talk about it on a podcast.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Different. It's very different. Bro, thank you again. Guys, thank you for watching and listening. What's the thing? If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, hit that notification bell.
Ding.
So you know when the new drops. Follow us everywhere at BAOS Podcast. And check out the long form audio so you can hear economists.
I'm not an economist.
Politicians.
Not a politician.
Forecasters.
Wouldn't say that either. I am a brewer, though.
And brewers.
It's just champions like Troy. Talk about craft beer. Let us know what you think. Hit us in when we post this. Let us know. Comments, DM as well. Like I'm sure publicly you could probably jump into some of the comments if people leave some stuff. We'll take like a nice little juicy clip so people can see it online.
I'm scared to see what that'll be.
Yeah, right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Peace.
Bye.